surroundings and cultural traditions have already surfaced. Downstream states also have suspicions. To them, it poses a threat to national and water security. With the US now changing course on combating climate change, there's more scope for China to promote its green energy credentials to a more receptive global audience. This edition of The Inquiry was presented by me, Charmaine Cozier. The producer was Vicky Carter, researcher Katie Morgan, editor Tara McDermott, and technical producer Craig Boardman.
That was The Inquiry from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho here on CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown, and it is milder this morning. We are expecting some snow. There's already some snow started in that southwest corner of our province. It is 3 minutes to 6 o'clock. The show is Information Radio on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app and on YouTube. We're on air with you till 8:37. Let's say good morning to the team. We've got our regular crew on today. Good morning to, let's start with Kev. We never start with Kev. Good morning, Kevin. Woo! Kevin Ipatables, our YouTube producer, waving hello on the stream there. Good morning to Abby Adeyemi, also in the control room with Kevin. Abby is our technical producer, and Abby also covers weather on the air. Good morning to Corey Funk, who's not yet in control room. He's busy out in our news center. Corey is our show director. Thanks, Abby. Abby's sending me some temperatures here. Corey is our show director, and we'll be covering the commute on the program today. So as mentioned, my name is Marcy Marcusa. Let's get started with news as we always do. Heather Wells is in with developing stories from here and around the world. Good morning.
Good morning, yes. Well, Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries is asking the courts to block access to an offshore gambling website. The Crown Corporation says Bodog is breaking the law by offering its services in this province, and it is something, it says, that is hitting its bottom line and letting out their frustration. Hockey fans at last night's Winnipeg Jets game against Carolina booing the U.S. national anthem. Just the latest time sports fans have vented frustration at Donald Trump's threatened tariffs. Those threats now on pause for a month. But we'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, tariffs are one thing. This morning, we have more to talk about because U.S. President Donald Trump has now proposed a U.S. takeover of Gaza. He said he wants to own Gaza. What does that mean? We're going to get more analysis. We're also going to hear from a Palestinian Manitoban this morning on the program, and World Report's up in a minute to look at that and what was said. In addition, I want to mention in the first hour of the program, there's a fab new bus. It's helping seniors. Yes, that's an acronym for something. But there's a fab new bus that's helping seniors get to grocery stores in some North Winnipeg neighborhoods, and we're going to hear all about it. That part of Winnipeg can be a food desert, so stay tuned.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
Tom Rooney, for the past 30 years, has been one of the most acclaimed and beloved theatre actors in Canada. But in the play 15 Dogs, that acclaimed and beloved actor has to pant and act like a dog. So does he ever feel silly? He'll be here to tell you the answer.
What can I say? It just feels honest.
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdelmahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Hamas says Gaza is not for sale after U.S. President Donald Trump proposed his country takes over.
تصريحات الرئيس ترامب بخصوص ترحيل شعبنا الفلسطيني من قطاع غزة.
A senior Hamas official in Egypt is rejecting Donald Trump's plan for the Gaza Strip. Trump says he wants the U.S. to take ownership of Gaza and suggests Palestinians leave permanently and relocate to neighboring Arab nations. Leaders around the world are reacting to Trump's plans. The CBC's Sasha Petrusik joins me now from Jerusalem. And Sasha, what is the latest?
Well, the reaction in this part of the world has been very swift. Obviously, we are hearing from Arab countries who have long opposed exactly this kind of movement of displacement of Palestinians from this part of the world. Both of the countries that Donald Trump has counted on, Jordan and Egypt, have already rejected that. Saudi Arabia has also said that it is not going ahead with agreements with Israel unless there is a Palestinian state, and rejecting this particular plan. We're also hearing objections from many countries around the world, from Australia, France, Spain, Russia, China. Pretty much the list is growing of countries who are saying that the only way to get peace in this corner of the Middle East is to have a two-state solution and a Palestinian state. I have to say there was pleasant surprise on the streets of Jerusalem today, and this is the kind of thing that people were telling me.
I don't want Gaza, okay? I want peace. And if the IDF need to be there, or American army be there, or European, or I don't know.
Maybe it will be replaced by Western values, as in businesses, real estate.
It's a good dream to dream of, but I don't think it's something that actually could happen. But maybe, let's hope for everyone. It's a win-win situation if it will happen to everyone, except Hamas, of course.
Hamas, of course, is rejecting this and saying that it is an absurd reaction. But the big question is going to be, what will it do to the ceasefire deal, which is halfway through? Will there be more hostages released? Will somebody decide that enough is enough and they will pull back? That is also a possibility. So we're hearing a lot of anger and resentment at the United States for something that they didn't expect.
All right. Thank you, Sasha.
My pleasure.
The CBC Sasha Petrusik in Jerusalem. A U.S. military plane carrying illegal migrants lands in India. Local media says over 100 Indian immigrants were on that, or migrants were on that flight. The deportation is part of U.S. President Donald Trump's immigration plan. His administration has so far used military aircraft to move illegal migrants to Guatemala, Peru, and Honduras. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi plans to meet with Trump next week. Migration is expected to be among the key issues up for discussion. China is reacting to the latest blow in its trade fight with the United States. The U.S. Postal Service says it will not accept packages from China or Hong Kong until further notice. That threatens the business models of Chinese online retailers. Here's Chinese government spokesperson Lin Jian speaking through a translator.
The Chinese government calls on the United States to stop politicizing and weaponizing trade and economic issues.
Days ago, U.S. President Donald Trump closed a tax loophole. It allowed anyone to ship packages less than $800 to the U.S. without duties. In 2023, a U.S. government report found Shein and Temu sent 30% of those small packages. They are Chinese-owned shopping sites. Alberta government ministers and MLAs are fanning out across the United States. They are talking up the positives of Canada's relationship with our neighbors to the south and trying to avoid the tariffs still hanging over Canada. Terry Reith has more on the charm offensive.
I think we can win that diplomatic fight.
Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith says Canada needs to de-escalate the rhetoric around trade and focus on benefits, that threats of retaliation are not the right approach.
We'd be far better to return to the table again and again with diplomacy, identify the issues that are causing irritation, and deal with them in a meaningful way.
Smith is planning to be in Washington next week and again later in the month for the Republican Governors Conference. 3 Alberta cabinet ministers are at the National Prayer Breakfast in Washington, rubbing shoulders and bending the ears of business and political leaders in the U.S. 2 other MLAs are in Oregon, meeting with leaders of the U.S. Pacific Northwest. Alberta Utilities Minister Nathan Neudorf is among those in Washington.
Every time that we have a chance to talk about the strength of that relationship and how much it means to both Canadians and Americans, we should take advantage to do so.
Jatan De Silva, a former diplomat, now a consultant, argues that as a conservative premier, Smith has access to channels not necessarily open to federal liberals.
It's great. It's a all hands on deck scenario, and the fact that the premier's going and other officials are going, I think it's good. We got to keep working those relationships and really keep trying to get that message out there.
While the threat of tariffs still hangs over the country, Smith says perhaps that's just how it's going to be for the next 4 years. Terry Reith, CBC News, Edmonton.
We have an update to a story we brought you last week. 2 members of Canada's military police have now been suspended. They're being investigated for misconduct. A judge found they tampered with evidence and showed bias while investigating a sexual assault trial. Nicole Williams has more.
They're not satisfied yet.
Criminal defense lawyer Austin Corbett confirms his client has filed a conduct complaint against military police. The defendant, a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, charged with assaulting and sexually assaulting his ex-wife, a military reservist. But his trial didn't happen. An Ontario Superior Court justice stayed the charges against him, saying police showed bias, failed to keep proper records, and withheld and destroyed evidence into the investigation against him. Corbett says this only came to light during pre-trial court proceedings.
The investigators who testified in this case downplayed their misconduct in court. And that was a finding of the judge.
The Canadian Forces Provost Marshal oversees military police in this country. In a statement issued this week, she addressed the court's concerns about misconduct in the ranks. She confirmed 2 of the officers involved have been suspended while an investigation takes place, and says this shows there are processes in place to keep military police accountable.
We are only seeing the tip of the iceberg.
Rory Fowler is an expert in military law and says he isn't so sure. Skeptical that such a declaration is only coming now that the case has been made public.
What we're seeing is a reaction because they literally got caught with their hand in the cookie jar.
He also questions if military police are able to investigate their own misconduct and suggests what's actually needed to rebuild faith in the forces is a public hearing. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Ottawa.
New data from British Columbia shows a significant drop in the number of toxic drug deaths in the province. It is a trend that has been documented across Canada and around the world, but advocates say the number of people dying from unregulated drugs is still way too high. Michelle Gassoub reports.
I am glad to see that slight decrease.
Drug deaths in BC fell 13% in 2024. The latest death toll is lower than any year since 2020. Even with that drop, the BC Coroner Service says over 2,200 people died of overdoses last year, a number Garth Mullins with the Vancouver Area Network of Drug Users says is a travesty.
The deaths aren't stopping. 13% decrease is nice, but it's nowhere near where we should be.
Back in 2016, BC declared drug deaths were a public health emergency. But since then, over 16,000 people have died. Mullen says the province has failed to act with urgency.
I just hope that politicians don't pat themselves on the back and take some kind of message that they're doing the right thing.
Fentanyl continues to be the main driver of deaths in BC. There's now a renewed focus on the drug as Canada faces pressure to secure its border with the U.S. Jay Stewart is with the advocacy group Mom Stop the Harm. He says it's unlikely new measures to fight fentanyl will make an impact.
The government down south deals in fear. It's concerning, but I don't know that the measures that have been discussed recently as today are going to make a lick of difference.
Still, there is some hope. BC could be turning the page on a crisis that has killed thousands. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
And that is the latest from World Report. This month, we are asking you to follow World Report wherever you get your podcasts. It helps us reach new listeners and helps you stay on top of the day's big stories. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, hello, everyone, and good morning. I'm R.C. Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Taking a milder turn. But that means there's going to be snow. There already is snow in parts of Manitoba in the southwest this morning. So Abby's got your forecast in a moment, as we always like to share. Start the show, get you ready for the day. This hour on the program, we're going to be hearing about a new bus that's helping some people in some North Winnipeg neighborhoods like River East and Elmwood get to the grocery store. It's been long awaited, and we're going to take you on the bus to hear more about it. In addition, this hour on the show, the European Union has been watching Mexico, Canada, and China's drama over threatened U.S. tariffs and is now preparing a strategy of its own. We're going to hear about that EU strategy this hour. And on our medical column, are you having surgery at some point? How are you preparing? Dr. Raj Bhardwaj will talk about the best ways to get ready. There's a big new study out about it, and he'll tell us all about that as well. Heather Wells is here next, though, at 6:11 to give us our news headlines live from our news center. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries has gone to court to block access to an offshore gambling website. The Crown Corporation says Bodog is breaking the law by offering its services in this province. Bodog, it says, is taking away also from Liquor and Lotteries' bottom line. So we're going to hear more about that coming up. And the director of the University of Manitoba's Transport Institute doesn't think U.S. President Donald Trump will follow through on tariff threats. Barry Prentice says he doesn't see those tariffs being implemented because of the political cost Trump would undergo. We'll hear more about that coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
Heather, the news is just like coming and coming and coming, right?
It never stops.
I know. Just when you think it's like settling, or maybe, we'll have some time to analyze, where, take some time to, it's just like coming and coming and coming at us. Wow. What a world.
These are wild days, aren't they?
What a time. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Heather will be with us throughout the morning. Of course, we'll check in with her all throughout the show here. Right now, though, it's Abby Adiemi's turn to come to the airwaves. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Mass. How are you doing today?
I'm pretty good today. Yeah, I can feel that it's getting warmer out there. And as you were saying, Abby, first thing this morning said warmer, but you dropped this in the studio.
Yes, it gets warm and then snow is somewhere
Snowfall
hanging, coming in the corner. We have this snowfall warning in effect for Dauphin and surrounding area coming in from the Saskatchewan end. This will be impacting southern Manitoba and the Great Lakes. We're tracking this system from Montana. It's expected to bring 10 to 20 centimeters of light, fluffy snow. That should be accumulating quickly starting this morning. It already started last night in some areas. The heaviest snowfall is forecast to occur tonight, particularly in the Great Lakes area, before it eases to light snow by tomorrow morning. This means the weather will be changing rapidly. If you are out there, conditions will change on you, so be prepared to change your plans. Looking at conditions for Winnipeg and surrounding areas, minus 17 right now, mostly cloudy outside. We will see these cloudy conditions stay with us with periods of snow starting this morning. A high will get to minus 12. However, the wind chill feels like minus 25 this morning. So across board, Marcy, it's going to be, it's kind of mild and chilly, and then snow will be in the forecast from the southern part of the province all the way to the northern areas of the province. There's also a risk of frostbite in lots of areas.
We're getting a very wintry winter this morning. Corey Funk is in next. We were just talking in the newsroom about how last year we didn't really have a lot of snow last year. It was more mild, it felt like.
Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of soft now after last winter because I was getting outside every day. I'm like, I could do this winter thing, and this year it feels a little bit harder.
It'll be pretty. It'll be nice. You've got toddlers though, so that's a different thing.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, it's hard, right? It's a big process.
It's like you want to be that dad that we're going to get outside, and then you do get outside, but then they just scream the whole time that it's cold, and you're like, we tried.
Let's go in.
Yeah, we're going in.
The commute this morning is how?
It's in the city so far, it's not so bad, but it's right now I'm keeping an eye on the Parkland region around Dauphin, Hamiota. The highway conditions there are deteriorating as we speak. I'm watching Manitoba 511, and I'm watching it change every few minutes here. Poor visibility, covered highway conditions right around Dauphin and all the highways around there, including the highways south of the Riding Mountain as well, around Shoal Lake, Hamiota, Oakburn area. Those highways are not looking so great either right now, according to Manitoba 511. But if you're out there on the highways, I'd love to get an in-person update from you. Let me know what you're seeing, how things are changing. Give me a call. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, a new program is helping some people in North Winnipeg neighborhoods get to grocery stores, courtesy of the Chalmers Neighborhood Renewal Corporation. They've started something called the Food Access Bus with support from their local councillor, or they're calling it FAB for short. And it is fabulous news because a lot of people say that there's not a lot of grocery stores that are within walkable distance of where they live. So, which is in fact also not just any bus, it's a chartered Winnipeg transit bus. So it's helping both seniors and those with mobility mobility issues get out and about as well as easily as possible. CBC reporter Felicia Adams spoke with one of the organizers outside a grocery store in Winnipeg's River East neighborhood.
Lailani Villarba. I'm the executive director of the Chalmers Neighborhood Renewal Corporation. One of the biggest issues for our seniors was that they had no source of transportation. And one of the things that they couldn't get to were grocery stores. And the cost of taking a taxi or getting on a bus was a little overwhelming for them. So we all came together and said, well, what do you think we can do? And then somebody had suggested that we charter a Winnipeg transit bus. And I said, well, I've got connections with the city. Let's see if we could make that happen. And so I connected, as soon as I got back to the office, I connected with the person that they had suggested I talk to. And Winnipeg Transit was amazing. And Lionel Barkman, he was one of the key people who helped us get this bus going in terms of planning the route and making sure that the bus was cost effective for us. And then I pulled our city councillors in. And the first one I pulled in was Jason Schreier because the majority of the people who had asked for it are low income, are vulnerable, are mobility challenged seniors. So he was on board and he jumped on right away. And then because the other half of the bus or other trip, the other 38 passengers were from the North Kildonian ward, we pulled in City Councillor Jeff Brawadi and he jumped on right away. And now we are able to provide this free bus that has access to these 2 large chain grocery stores or stores. And they seem to be very happy with it, and it's really exciting to see that people who don't usually get out and would even consider going on a bus are going on a bus. And it's environmentally friendly because it's one bus taking a whole bunch of people. You're not all taking cabs or trying to get here on your own. And the camaraderie on the bus is great for our seniors. The social isolation is being addressed. So many wonderful factors and benefits and impacts to this program and they get to shop. They get to shop and they have help shopping. So that's a big deal for us.
And how many people came on this sort of pilot run?
So we had 76 people registered for the bus and things came up. So we currently have just over 40 for the first time. So we're doing good, I think. And it's a pilot, so we got to work out some kinks and make sure that the bus is full. And we are able to kind of manage the capacity of the groceries and the people. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be a permanent thing for us. We are going to be able to do this every month.
Lailani Villarba there, Executive Director of the Chalmers Neighborhood Renewal Corporation. Now, next, Felicia Adam, our reporter, also got on the FAB bus, and that's where she met 88-year-old Elaine Strelaev.
We are going shopping. It's quite a different experience for us. We haven't had a bus take us shopping for a long time, so we're going on this bus, which I didn't expect to be so big, and I'm actually kind of excited about it.
And how did you hear about this?
How did we hear about it? Because I don't know, somebody mentioned it, I think, in the building. I think maybe our lady that looks after things had mentioned that there was a bus, and we had wanted a bus to take us shopping, and so that's how this came about, yeah.
And how, you said this was a different experience, how does this differ from what you normally do?
Well, I would usually go on Handy Transit, usually. Sometimes I'll take Handy Transit back and just the bus going down, or well, it differs. It's a big bus and it's people that I know that are on here with me. So it's just kind of fun, like a little bit more fun. I'm looking forward to it.
You mentioned Handy Transit. Is it normally easy for you to go and get your groceries, or is it difficult at times?
Well, Handy Transit just allows you 2 small bags. So it's not always the best option. That's one thing I don't like about Handy Transit. But see, like here now, this is good because you come with your walker and you sit down, and it's easier to sit and it's easier to get off the bus. Speaking for myself, I find this would be a lot easier.
How long have you been using the handy transit?
Handy transit, about 15 years.
Is there like a fee that comes with handy transit?
Yes, there is. I think it costs us about $1.40 a trip now.
And like prices everywhere are going higher, right? Groceries are.
Oh, yeah.
How are you feeling about that?
Well, I don't like it at all. I think it's very, very way out of whack, very out of control. It's hard for everybody, but seniors are really feeling the pinch. I really think it's very hard. You got to you have to check everything out before you buy it. Compare prices.
Does this trip help you sort of take away from worrying about getting to the grocery store, that money that you have to pay to get there? Just focus.
Well, in a way, yes. It would help an awful lot. This is the first time that we've ever taken a bus like this. It's a big bus, right? It's like a city bus is what it is. We have never had a city bus before, as far as I know. They've been smaller buses, as far as I know.
And just for the people at home that maybe they're not getting it, they're not understanding how helpful this big bus.
This would just be so great, especially with the walker, because when you are on handy transit, it has to be folded up and put into the back of the van or the car or whatever. And this way you just come on, you sit down, and you get off very easily. Yes, I'm really looking forward to this new experience. I really am.
Will this trip allow you to buy more groceries?
Well, I understand we're allowed 4 bags. And with the walker, really, what does it matter? I could have 5 bags maybe.
What are you planning on buying today?
Today, I have certain things that I buy. It'll be like fruit, frozen fruit, cottage cheese, yogurt, cheese, stuff like that. And I'll look around at their clothes, see if they got something there that's suitable for an older lady.
That's Elaine Streleyev in conversation with CBC reporter Felicia Adam on a long-awaited bus that's taking people in some North Winnipeg neighborhoods out to get groceries, mostly seniors who otherwise wouldn't be getting out or have challenges getting groceries. They were so excited about this in the neighborhood that I think, about 6 emails. They sent emails saying it was coming, and then they sent emails after with feedback. I want to read one little thing, because apparently after, one of the quotes was, "I'm happy today going out. The bus driver was nice too, and we all clapped for him." So it must have been just lovely on those buses. As you heard Leilani Villarba mention out of Chalmers Resource Centre, that they are hoping that this will be a regular thing.
Ever hear a really good radio show and fall in love right away? Fall in love at first listen with the CBC Listen app. Find CBC radio shows like As It Happens and Now or Never and stream them anytime, anywhere for free. Download CBC Listen today.
-17, some snow coming to Winnipeg. That's going to start tonight. The other snow, most of the heavy snow is going to start into this evening, but some's already started up around the Riding Mountain area, Swan River, Arbor, Grand Rapids. There's a snowfall warning for that part of Manitoba. 10 to 20 centimeters is expected in the total system. So, but again, you're starting a little milder than we've been, with a high of -12 in the city of Winnipeg today. Well, next on the show, the European Union, the EU, is watching Canada and Mexico's drama with the U.S. play out from their side of the Atlantic Ocean. U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly complained about a trade deficit with the 27-country bloc. And after slapping a 10% tax on goods from China and threatening the tariffs here, Trump has said the EU is next. So Fred Langen's here to talk about it. Longtime business journalist. He's in Toronto. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning.
So what's the prep look like? What's the EU doing in response to this threat?
Just sitting there being nervous because they have the biggest trade surplus with the United States after China, $282 billion, I think. They sell, the United States, Americans are consumers, not savers. And so they buy a lot of luxury goods from Europe, from Porsches to scarves and shoes and clothes and champagne, and wine. Tariffs would really hurt them, perhaps as much as the tariffs would hurt Canada.
What leaders, how are the individual leaders disagreeing over this? I understand, there's some divisions that are coming up already.
Yeah, well, Italy's Prime Minister Meloni, she gets along with Donald Trump. Macron in France doesn't. And these tariffs would hurt the domestic political structure of these countries, and Macron's on pretty thin ground these days, and so they're nervous about that. But most of all, they're nervous about what's going to happen to their industries. Germany manufactures cars, although the Germans do make some cars in the United States. They have factories there, but there are lots of small to medium-sized companies in Germany that make car parts for BMWs, Volkswagens, Mercedes, etc. And that's shipped over to the United States, and of course there would be tariffs on those. Until recently, the richest man in the world was Bernard Arnault, who owns a luxury goods company in France that makes everything from fancy scarves to champagne and luggage. Then there's Zara in Spain and all kinds of luxury goods in Italy. So the Europeans are very vulnerable.
Remind us what happened in the first Trump administration, the first time he held office, and he slapped tariffs on Europe, and what the result of that was.
Well, the same thing that he did to us in aluminum and steel. It was serious, but not that serious. Not as all-encompassing as the tariff war on Canada would be now, and would be in Europe. It's because he's going to put things on everything, and that will, a lot of Mr. Trump's richer supporters are going to feel it when the price of a Mercedes goes up several $1,000s, and fancy scarves and whatever are also go up in perfume and all that sort of stuff. Tariffs generally are sort of an economic, sort of a numbskull solution.
Before you go this morning, where's the UK in all of this?
Oh, they're safe because they don't make anything anymore. Basically, Britain is a services country, so the British pound is actually up on this news. By the way, I see the Canadian dollar's at 70 cents in the last hour or so against the U.S. dollar. But Britain is, so Keir Starmer is breathing a sigh of relief because the British buy more things from the United States than they sell to them. So they'll be safe.
Thank you very much for the analysis as this story is ever-changing daily. Appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye now.
It's Fred Langan, a freelance business journalist and veteran former CBC broadcaster as well. We reached him this morning in Toronto. Time right now is coming up to 6:30 here. We have the news coming up for you in just a minute. In the commute this morning, you want to pay attention to the highways up around Riding Mountain and through that area. Snow covered some sections. Check 511 before you head out. Of course, we're talking about this system of snow that's going to be coming through the province and already started in the southwest. So in the city of Winnipeg, you should be in regular winter driving conditions in the surrounding highways as well in the perimeter. But let us know if you see anything that's developing. 788-3093 is the line to call. That is our commuter line, and Corey Funk will be picking it up. Coming up, we have business news on CBC, so stay with us here. Christly Ramlakan is back this morning talking about more about the delay in tariffs for a month here in Canada, and also looking overall at the financial health of Canadians right now. That's right after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, you feel the difference when you step outside. It's not quite as cold as it has been. We're at minus 17 right now, a high today of minus 12. So milder, but the trade-off is we get a little bit of snow beginning this morning, continuing through the day into the evening, about 5 centimeters for Winnipeg. And as Marcy mentioned, snowfall warnings for parts of western Manitoba and the Interlake today. Up to 20 centimeters is possible. Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries is asking the courts to block access to an offshore gambling website. The Crown Corporation says Bodog is breaking the law by offering its services in Manitoba, something that's hitting their bottom line. University of Calgary researcher Spencer Murch studies gambling and addictions. He says sites like Bodog took off during the pandemic.
The legal online gambling websites may have more regulations, they have more requirements that get in the way of excessive online gambling. If we are serious about harm reduction, we also need to be serious about enforcing bans on illegal offshore gambling.
CBC News has reached out to Bodog but has not had a response. U.S. President Donald Trump is making a stunning proposal about the future of Gaza.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it.
Trump making that comment last night after meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House. Stephen Zunes is a professor of Middle East politics at the University of San Francisco.
It is rather shocking, actually, particularly a president who campaigned on an America First platform and really seems to ally himself with some of the most extremist elements within Israeli politics, and puts in a very dangerous new role for the United States, which, despite the experiences in Iraq and elsewhere, seems to be ready for another Middle East entanglement.
And this morning, Hamas officials are rejecting Trump's proposal, saying the president's comments reflect deep ignorance. You can hear the latest and reaction to that proposal by Donald Trump coming up on World Report at 7. The director of the University of Manitoba's Transport Institute doesn't think U.S. President Donald Trump will follow through on tariff threats. Trump has paused tariffs on Canadian imports to the U.S. for the next month. Barry Prentice says he doesn't see the tariffs being implemented because the political cost to Trump, he says, would be too great. He also says making changes to the current supply chains between the two countries isn't as easy as one might think.
When you have established contacts and products and what have you, you don't just, instantly shift and buy from somebody else. The question always is, who is that somebody else? Because the reason you're buying from Canada or from Manitoba in the first place is that we have good prices and good quality.
Prentice also says the dispute has offered Canada a silver lining of sorts to deal with its fentanyl problem and illegal border crossings. Well, letting out their frustrations. Hockey fans at last night's Jets game against Carolina booing the U.S. national anthem. Just the latest time sports fans have vented frustration at Donald Trump's threatened tariffs. Jets anthem singer Stacey Natras understands why it's happening.
If they haven't been doing it a long time, it could really throw you off, I imagine. But I also understand it. I mean, I'm a Canadian in through, and I feel angry. I feel frustrated.
The jeering comes even after Trump decided to put his threats on pause. We'll make that 7 straight.
He scored! Niederreiter off a brilliant feed by Alex Iafallo, and it's 1-0 Winnipeg.
Nino Niederreiter in the first period on TSN as the Jets blank the Carolina Hurricanes 3-0. The goal comes after a Carolina goal was ruled goalie interference, giving Winnipeg a bit of an extra spark there. Niederreiter says his team has high standards for play.
We hold each other to a very high standard. We want to make sure we leave it out there each and every night and put ourselves in the best position possible for the future.
Not just the Jets' 7th straight win, but also a shutout for backup goalie Eric Comrie, who made 29 saves on the night. Next up, Winnipeg hosts the New York Islanders on Friday. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather Wells. Time now to look at our regional forecast. We've got a snowy system involved here, Abby.
I'll call it a mix of activities happening, from a mix of snow, cold temperatures, windy weather. Some areas will even be they're already having that weather warnings. Now, here's what's happening across the province. For Winnipeg and surrounding areas, -17 right now. We see cloudy conditions today. Snow is going to be starting sometime this morning. We are looking at a high of -12, but the wind chill factored in this morning, it feels like -25. Now, that snow will continue into into tonight, and we should be seeing an accumulation of about 5 centimeters once the system passes through. And we're looking at similar condition in the Pembina Valley region from Morris all the way down to the U.S. border, with temperatures around minus 16 at this time. Light snow also in the forecast. Now, heading west to Brandon, minus 18. Light snow also being spotted in that part of the province. We should see 5 to 10 centimeters of snow today for folks in Brandon. The high will be around minus 14, but it will feel like minus 26 this morning. And the snow will slow down. Like tonight, it's going to slow down. You should see additional 2 to 4 centimeters before leaving you some cloudy conditions. In Dauphin, where we have that snowfall warning in effect, 10 to 20 centimeters of snow we are expecting once this system goes through. Currently, temperatures around minus 18. The high will be around minus 14 today. Another 5 centimeters expected later tonight into the overnight period. For Gimli, currently temperature around minus 20. Cloudy conditions we're seeing. Snow will be starting your day 2 to 4 centimeters expected. Highs will be around minus 13. In the powerful influence, we're seeing clear skies. Temperatures around minus 24 at this time. That part of the province would get some sunshine this morning. Clouds will roll in later. High will be around minus 17. Then traveling up north to Thompson and Churchill, we have light snow and blowing snow in that part of the province at this time. Thompson at minus 19, Churchill at minus 13. We should be seeing the wind chill close to minus 30, minus 35 for that part of the province. So in summary, we should just let the people in the Parkland region and the Great Lakes understand that snow is coming.
Yep, for sure. They probably already know, as you said. All right, let's get into how that's affecting highways and such. Corey's been looking at the maps.
Yeah, they particularly probably already know if they're on the highways this morning. I'm watching Manitoba 511 right now, and I'm seeing highways around Swan River, Winnipeg, Osis, Dauphin right now being reported as covered with poor visibility right now. So you might be driving through some treacherous conditions on those highways this morning, as well as south of Riding Mountain National Park around Hamiota area, Shoal Lake. Also, those highways are also showing poor visibility. I'm slowly watching things change as that system makes its way east. So throughout the morning, I imagine it's only going to get worse if you're in western Manitoba this morning. So just be careful if you're out there on the highways. If you have any updates for me, I'm just hearing this from the internet, but I want to hear from you. It's always better. Give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Hey, Corey, we're going to award really cool prize packs in the next hour, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so yesterday at this time, I think it was around this time, we were talking about curling and the Bonspiel, the Ironman Bonspiel on the river this weekend in support of Heart and Stroke. CBC, a proud sponsor. But we've got these awesome prize packs. You were waxing poetic about how you could throw a turkey down the ice really well.
I'm better at throwing turkeys than I am rocks. It's true.
But you went through the entries because we asked for heartwarming curling stories.
Yes, and we got a whole bunch of lovely entries that I'm really excited to share with you. I think in the next hour we're going to be sharing them. Just like, it's amazing how, when you get a bunch of people together on an ice with a bunch of rocks, they can just get some lovely stuff. And a lot of people in terms of all the stories kind of revolve around family and community every time.
Love that.
So, yeah.
When are we rolling those?
7:20, just before sports.
Excellent. Okay, so if you entered, we will share some stories and we'll tell you who won. So we'll have that, as Corey mentioned, just ahead of sports. Right now, we got to get to business news because Crystalie Ramlakan is standing by. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So tariffs on Canadian goods, we know, delayed for a month. Some businesses, though, are not letting their guard down, right?
Yeah, that's right. So businesses are looking to diversify and lessen their reliance on the U.S. by increasing sales here in Canada and by expanding into new markets. They're also seeking other manufacturers and suppliers. And, even though it's been convenient to sell south of the border because of the U.S.'s proximity and large customer base, businesses are now analyzing their supply chains, partners, margins, and expenses because of all of this political uncertainty. Now, retaliatory tariffs from Canada could also affect those who import goods for their businesses, and those costs could get passed on to consumers, but some are really not keen to do that. Christy Sumer runs Encircled, which is a Toronto fashion brand that makes its clothes in Canada for the most part, and more than a third of her customers are in the U.S.
We're even starting to talk about, do we open up retail in Canada and start to expand our footprint here a little bit more on our home soil? what are the opportunities here to really focus on Canada again? And I'm also hoping again that this movement towards Canadian made continues and highlighting these brands.
Now, despite the tariff pause, uncertainty still hangs over the Canadian economy. Unifor, the country's largest private sector union, says all the talk of tariffs is threatening Canadian jobs. And the union is calling for Canada to use every single available lever to build a strong, resilient, and diverse economy. The Business Council of Canada says it remains clear that Canada must act with urgency to improve long-term economic prospects. And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has outlined a $1.3 billion plan to address Trump's concerns around border security.
Yeah, the minister in charge of that file was actually Manitoba at the border yesterday. I should mention here, just to build on this, in the next hour we have a full interview on interprovincial trade. A lot of people are leaning into that now. Okay, hang on a minute. Let's remind ourselves, what are the barriers there? Could things be improved? What does that mean for Manitoba? Your story next, though, is about overall how Canadians are doing with their financial health.
Yes, so insolvencies rose just over 12% last year compared to the year before, with business insolvencies leading the way, up almost 29%. So construction, transportation, and warehousing, and accommodation and food services were the sectors that saw the biggest increase in insolvencies. There was a 15-year high in business and consumer insolvencies last year, with about 375 per day. So Andre Bolduc is the chair of the Canadian Association of Insolvency and Restructuring Professionals, and he says businesses and consumers should expect continued pressure this year amid potential tariffs and mortgage renewals.
Interest rates have gone up, so anyone on a variable mortgage has had to pay more for housing. Anyone renewing their mortgage that have recently or it'll be costing them more. And approximately 50% of Canadian households continue to live paycheck to paycheck, which means they have no savings. So when unforeseen circumstances happen, like a job loss, health issue, marital issues like a separation, it has an impact on your budget.
Now, the Bank of Canada has lowered its key interest rate to 3%, but homeowners renewing mortgages are likely still facing higher monthly payments than they were when they last locked in a rate. And prices on many everyday necessities are still more expensive than they were a few years ago, even though inflation is slowing down right now.
And finally, before we look at the markets and the numbers this morning, WestJet is facing a ruling about compensation when flights are canceled or delayed.
Yes, so a BC Supreme Court judge has barred the airline from telling travelers their reimbursement for meals and accommodations is capped. So until last summer, the airline said it would only reimburse up to $150 per night for accommodations, $200 if abroad, and $45 per day for food. And the policy excluded roaming charges, lost wages, and missed events. And the airline says it has now replaced those rules with ones that have no ceiling for costs incurred within the carrier's control. Now, WestJet says it will consider reasonable requests for expenses, but this comes ahead of a broader court hearing next year on whether WestJet is actually considering each passenger claim on its merits. And the trial will also examine whether the company's communication around repayment has been deceptive. And the country's passenger rights charter says airlines must offer free accommodations that are reasonable if a traveler has to wait overnight after a trip disruption that was within the carrier's control. And customers must also be granted food and drink in reasonable quantities for disruptions of more than 2 hours.
Pretzel? Cookie? I'm just kidding.
Exactly.
That's on the plane. What is happening in the markets so far this morning?
Yes. So in Europe, markets are mixed. Germany is down. The UK is up. France is down. In Asia, markets are mostly on the rise. Japan is up. Shanghai and Hong Kong, though, are both still down right now. Oil is down 25 cents to $72.45 US per barrel. Gold is up $16.44 to $2,859.15 US per ounce. And the dollar is up 0.03 of a cent to 69.9 cents. US.
All right, Crystal Lee, we'll talk to you again tomorrow. Good to have you back.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
Crystal Lee Ramlicam with our business news. It's Tuesday morning. Milder when you walk out there this morning. Minus 17. We'll be at minus 12 today. But you know what Manitoba's like. When it's beautiful and sunny and clear, it's freezing. And when it's mild, we're going to get snow. That's exactly what's going to happen. Tonight, about 5 centimeters expected in our forecast. And there is that snowfall warning for the southwest portion of the province already this morning. And through Riding Mountain, it could be a little tricky driving. Well, next we have another cover from Winnipeg singer-songwriter Noah Dirksen. He's sharing another single. This time it's a cover of Leonard Cohen's 1984 tune, If It Be Your Will. It's also the final single, by the way, from Noah's upcoming album that's called Stolen Serenades. It's all covers of some of his favorite tunes. Let's see how this one sounds. Noah Dirksen with Dominic Adams and If It Be Your Will.
If it be your will that I speak no more, that my voice be still as it was before, I will speak no more. I shall abide until I am spoken for. If it be your will, if it be your will, let a voice be true. And from this broken hill, I will sing to you. And from this broken hill, all your praises they shall ring. If it be your will to let me sing, if it be your will, if there is a choice, let the rivers fill, let the hills rejoice, let your mercy spill on all these burning hearts in hell. If it be your will to make us well.
Noah Dirksen's cover of If It Be Your Will by Leonard Cohen, backed up there by Dominic Adams. If you want to hear more from his upcoming album, Stolen Serenades, you can check it out. Also includes some really fantastic covers, in my humble opinion, that we've aired here on the show before, of U2's I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For, and Macy Gray's I Try. It's 10 to 7 right now on 89.3. I'm Marcy Marcusa on CBC. And next, it's time for our medical column. A study out from the University of Ottawa published recently in the British Medical Journal takes a look at people's preparations before surgery, conditioning that is referred to as prehabilitation or preoperative rehabilitation. The study says that prehab is associated with lower rates of medical complications as well as shorter hospital stays. And Dr. Raj Bhardwaj is here to walk us through it.
Good morning, Marcy.
Prehab. What kinds of things might that include?
Yeah, a lot of people think about it and they think, oh, that must just mean exercise, being able to do sit-ups and stuff. So we know that surgery is often physically hard to recover from, and fit people generally recover from major surgery better overall. But it's not just about physical stuff. Prehab can also look at people's nutrition and diet, as well as their mental health, to sort of, build up their reserve of all those things before their operation, so that maybe they can withstand the stresses of surgery better, both physically and psychologically. So the researchers from Ottawa, they've tried to figure this out by crunching numbers from 186 randomized control clinical trials about prehab around the world. Those trials included over 15,000 people, and they were able to tease out some interesting trends. And we can leverage those trends, right? Ideally, to prepare people better for surgery as much as we can, so that they can recover faster, have fewer complications, and get out of hospital sooner after their surgery's done.
So can we break this down a little bit? Because it obviously makes sense that if you're fitter, you may recover faster physically. How much does exercise before surgery help, though?
Yeah, so this study found that exercise before surgery was associated with lower odds of complications by about half compared to usual pre-surgical care. It also shortened your the number of days that you stayed in hospital by just about a day on average, compared to people who weren't doing any exercise prehab. And if we look at sort of each of those three things, the physical, the nutritional, and the psychological, if you look at them alone, the physical prehab looks to have the biggest effects on its own. But again, there's a couple of details you have to consider, right? So one is, what kind of physical stuff are you doing? Are you doing sit-ups? Are you doing aerobic fitness or strength or flexibility or what? So for me, I think it's really important to improve your functional fitness before your surgery. So for functional, what that means is, things like if you're sitting on the floor on your butt, can you get up off the floor without using your arms? Or, can you touch your toes? Things like that become super relevant after surgery, because they will improve your strength and your core stability so that you don't fall and maybe injure yourself after surgery. They improve your flexibility so you can do things like, take care of that surgical wound on your foot or your ankle or something, maybe reduce the risk of complications like infection after surgery, things like that. So, physical stuff, super important. And it makes sense that if you're only going to do one sort of prehab, the physical prehab, it does have the biggest correlation with having fewer complications.
How does nutrition fit into this?
Yeah, so when you have surgery, that's a huge physical stress on your body. Your body has to rebuild tissues. It has to lay down scar tissue and repair blood vessels and nerves and make more red blood cells if you bled at all during surgery, right? So those processes need biological resources. We get those from our food. Right? When you're recovering, you want to eat well as you can, so that you can give all the raw materials that your body needs. But your body also pulls that from the bank, and the bank is your muscles, your bones, right? All the tissues that you already have that have those resources. So it might pull protein from your muscles, or calcium from your bones to help to rebuild, new blood vessels and scar tissue and things like that. So, prehab wise, you want to make sure you're getting enough calcium and iron and other minerals and vitamins and protein, right? Research into prehab suggests that adding more protein-rich foods, even for a few weeks before an operation, can help with recovery after the operation. And then again, you don't want to do this in isolation, right? If you can do the nutrition piece plus the exercise piece of prehab, that was actually associated with about the same reduction in complications as exercise alone, but an even shorter length of stay in hospital compared to just exercise prehab. So, you've got these sort of three modalities. Don't just do one, concentrate on doing all three if you can.
Now, you mentioned researchers also looked here at psychological prehab. Can you put that in context for us?
Yeah, for sure. They didn't go into giant detail in their paper, but things like motivational training or talk therapy to help with people, help people with their mood, especially if they're feeling anxious or depressed before their surgery, if they're going in for a big heart operation or cancer surgery or something. That makes sense that they might be, having feelings like that. For me, again, I've heard of patients who hosted a get-together of their friends before surgery, partly to commune with their friends, but also they say to their friends, hey, can you, when you come over, please bring one one serving of a meal that you've cooked at home and frozen for me, because then afterwards they're going to have meals ready to eat, after their surgery, because they probably won't want to cook, right? Isn't that a great idea? So that helps to build the community around you. It helps your friends to be aware that you're going through this, and it helps you to be more connected with your friends, right? So I think that's a really important thing to do, along with the nutritional piece and the exercise piece.
If a person is on a waiting list for surgery, what can they be doing instead of just waiting?
Yeah, really important to talk to your healthcare team about prehab and see if there are formal programs that you can get into that aren't just sort of the one and done kind of, this is what your surgery is going to be like, but things like, where you can have some exercise classes before surgery, or nutritional information and support, talk to a dietitian in the hospital, things like that. And then the psychological support as well. In terms of afterwards, the physiotherapists and occupational therapists that work in hospitals often know a ton about the nitty-gritty of recovering from surgery in the hospital and at home. So they're a great resource to tap into if you can get them as part of your surgical team. And then really work on all three of those branches, right? The physical, the psychological, and the nutritional prehab. That is what is shown in this paper to work best from an overall quality of life and overall reduction in complications and stuff. And of course, this has to be tailored to you in your situation, your surgery, right?
All right, Dr. Bardwaj, thank you.
My pleasure.
Dr. Bardwaj is on our show every week. He is our medical columnist. He's an urgent care doctor in Calgary, by the way. Let's get to Heather Wells, who is here with Manitoba News headlines at 3 minutes to 7 a.m.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries is headed to court to block access to an offshore gambling website. The Crown Corporation says Bodog is breaking the law by offering its services in this province and letting out their frustration. Hockey fans at last night's Jets game against Carolina booing the U.S. national anthem. Just the latest time sports fans have vented frustration at Donald Trump's threatened tariffs. We'll hear more about that and other news coming up at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
We also hit the street yesterday to ask you whether or not your attitudes are changing towards the United States after the potential tariff war, and we're going to hear what some of you had to say. In addition, in the next hour of the show, we're going to share heartwarming curling stories, including someone who took their grandma's kettle and froze the water in there and threw it down the ice. Ooh. Oh, how did that work out? So we're going to share some of your entries into our curling contest. We've got some great stories. In addition, coming up at 10 to 8, what does interprovincial trade look like? If this is going to be one of the responses to the potential tariff threat, to look more internally at our country and where we can trade, what are the barriers? So stay tuned. We're going to have a detailed discussion and interview about that as well in the next hour. Right now it is minus 17. It's cloudy in Winnipeg. The high minus 12 and some snow beginning early this morning. Just some periods of snow, but then overnight about 5 centimeters expected for the city of Winnipeg. Check 511 before you're out, especially up around Riding Mountain and areas around Barons River, Poplar, Grand Rapids, all through Swan River, Verdun, Souris as well, and Dauphin. So this is because of the snowfall warning there, 10 to 20 centimeters expected in total. And that system's just going to move through. And the largest accumulations actually are coming into tonight as well. So it's just going to continue for you. 788-3093 if you need to reach Corey with news on the commute. Stay with us. World Report's next on CBC.
Today on The Current.
Be a traveler, it's to get out of your comfort zone and to learn. And I think it's important for us to travel in a way that broadens our perspective.
It was called the Hippie Trail, the route from Istanbul to Kathmandu that attracted thousands of North American adventurers in the 1970s. The travel writer Rick Steves looks back at the life-changing journey he took on that trail, coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Hamas says Gaza is not for sale after U.S. President Donald Trump proposed his country take over.
تصريحات الرئيس ترامب
A senior Hamas official in Egypt is rejecting Donald Trump's plan for the Gaza Strip. Trump says he wants the U.S. to take ownership of Gaza and suggests Palestinians leave permanently and relocate to neighboring Arab nations. Leaders around the world are reacting to Trump's plans. The CBC's Sasha Petrusek joins me now from Jerusalem. And Sasha, what is the latest?
Well, the reaction in this part of the world has been very swift. Obviously, we are hearing from Arab countries who have long opposed exactly this kind of movement of displacement of Palestinians from this part of the world. Both of the countries that Donald Trump has counted on, Jordan and Egypt, have already rejected that. Saudi Arabia has also said that it is not going ahead with agreements with Israel unless there is a Palestinian state, and rejecting this particular plan. We're also hearing objections from many countries around the world, from Australia, France, Spain, Russia, China. Pretty much the list is growing of countries who are saying that the only way to get peace in this corner of the Middle East is to have a two-state solution and a Palestinian state. I have to say there was pleasant surprise on the streets of Jerusalem today. This is the kind of thing that people were telling me.
I don't want Gaza, okay? I want peace. And if the IDF need to be there, or American army be there, or European, or I don't know.
Maybe it will be replaced by Western values, as in businesses, real estate.
It's a good dream to dream of, but I don't think it's something that actually could happen. But maybe, let's hope for everyone. It's a win-win situation if it will happen to everyone, except Hamas, of course.
Hamas, of course, is rejecting this and saying that it is an absurd reaction. But the big question is going to be, what will it do to the ceasefire deal, which is halfway through? Will there be more hostages released? Will somebody decide that enough is enough and they will pull back? That is also a possibility. So we're hearing a lot of anger and resentment at the United States for something that they didn't expect.
All right. Thank you, Sasha.
My pleasure.
The CBC, Sasha Petrusek in Jerusalem. U.S. military planes are returning illegal migrants to India. It's part of a key Trump policy to deport undocumented foreign nationals. About 18,000 Indian nationals are believed to have entered the U.S. illegally, and as Salima Shivji tells us, dozens of them are being brought to India today.
The C-17 military plane landed in the early afternoon in Amritsar, in India's northern state of Punjab. Reports are with between 100 and 200 people aboard, all Indians who were living illegally in the United States. It's the first military plane sending illegal immigrants back to India and the first India-bound flight since U.S. President Donald Trump returned to office. Trump has made forced deportations a key part of his immigration agenda, and India is the third highest on the list of countries, just behind Mexico and El Salvador, with undocumented immigrants in America. An estimated 725,000 Indians live illegally in the U.S. It's a sticking point in the increasingly close diplomatic ties between Washington and New Delhi.
India is firmly opposed to illegal migration.
The spokesperson for India's foreign ministry, Randir Jaiswal, has repeatedly said India is open to accepting any illegal migrants back from the U.S. once their nationality is verified. New Delhi is hoping that openness will prompt the Trump administration to improve legal routes for Indians headed to the U.S. on skilled worker visas.
Both sides are engaged in a process to deter illegal migration. Any talk of numbers at this stage is premature, but I do want to emphasize that cooperation between India and the U.S. is strong and effective in this domain.
The issue will also be on the agenda when India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi heads to Washington to meet with Trump, likely next week. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Mumbai.
Trump's demands of NATO member countries are playing out at the Liberal leadership race. CBC News has learned Mark Carney is expected to announce if he becomes prime minister, he will bring Canada's defense spending to 2% of GDP by the end of 2030. 2% is the current benchmark for NATO members, but Trump says he wants each country to commit more and spend 5% of GDP on defense. Swedish police say they still don't understand why a shooter opened fire at an adult education center west of Stockholm yesterday. Here's local police chief Roberto Ede Forrest.
We continue our investigation intensively. We're trying to create a picture around the perpetrator.
He says 11 people were killed in the shooting, including the perpetrator. 6 others were injured. Police say it appears the shooter acted alone and was dead before officers encountered him. The Alberta government is suing a nonprofit organization that moved vulnerable clients into a hotel. CBC News first broke the story last year. We detailed how one of those clients was a stroke patient who had been discharged from hospital. Instead of long-term care, he was given fast food and a hotel room that wasn't equipped for his wheelchair. Now, as Julia Wong tells us, the case has been referred to police.
Close to a year after vulnerable clients were moved to a hotel and received inadequate care, the Alberta government is suing housing provider Contentment Social Services for more than $140,000. University of Calgary professor of health law, Lorian Hardcastle.
This lawsuit sends the message to other agencies that if they are not providing the services that they say they're providing, that potentially they could face similar litigation.
The lawsuit includes the cost of a hotel bill, hotel damage, rent, and meals for clients covered by the Alberta government. A ministry spokesperson says the province stepped in to ensure clients continued to receive services. Some had just been discharged from hospital, others relied on provincial financial benefits. For Hardcastle, it's hard to feel a sense of resolution.
There's nothing really about this lawsuit that feels like this problem won't happen again in the future.
And there are still many unanswered questions, like whether clients will get their money back. Jody Weber is a social worker who teaches at Algoma University.
There has to be some accountability and some responsibility. It becomes one of the follow the money situations.
The province says it referred the case to Edmonton Police. A police spokesperson tells CBC News it received a report of fraud that the Financial Crimes Section is currently investigating. CBC News was not able to reach Contentment Social Services president by phone or email. A lawyer for a director declined to comment. None of the allegations in the lawsuit have been proven in court. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
You may have heard or seen ads for AGM renovations featuring celebrity contractor Mike Holmes. Those ads have now vanished amid a CBC News investigation. Sophia Harris has more.
Trust AGM. They're the basement renovation specialists I recommend.
Celebrity contractor Mike Holmes has appeared in more than a dozen ads for AGM renovations, operating in Ontario and BC. Eric Cartier of Barrie, Ontario says that advertising influenced his decision to hire AGM to renovate 4 bathrooms in his Barrie, Ontario home. It's a decision he now regrets.
Yeah, so this is water damage in our living room from a cracked toilet that they installed.
Cartier says the reno was fraught with problems. According to documentation obtained by CBC News, those problems included hazardous electrical work done by an unlicensed electrician who didn't get a required permit.
Oh, we were furious, very angry. It's our home. It's where kids sleep.
Cartier is one of 2 AGM customers CBC News interviewed who say unsafe electrical work was done in their home.
Because electrical work can lead to electrical fires if not done correctly.
Holmes also does videos about electrical safety. Mike Holmes' company, the Holmes Group, didn't respond to requests for comment. But after reaching out, CBC News discovered AGM ads featuring Holmes have disappeared from the internet. AGM told CBC News its relationship with the Holmes Group is in a transition phase as AGM works through a brand refresh.
Yeah, I think that he could do better. He should be...
The Cartiers are now suing AGM for negligence. AGM denies any wrongdoing. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Toronto.
Researchers at University College London have found your mother was right. Everything really does feel better in the morning. The researchers spent 2 years surveying 50,000 adults and published their findings in the journal BMJ Mental Health. The results suggest people's mental health is best first thing in the morning. So from all of us at World Report, get out there and have a great day. That is the latest from World Report. If you are trying to make staying informed a daily habit, follow World Report wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Marcia Young.
Hey, well, cheers to that. Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio. Kevin and Abby and Corey behind the glass, thank you for joining us here on CBC 89.3. 9:90 a.m. on the app and YouTube as well. Abby with the forecast in a moment. Milder and some snow today in parts of the province. Well, this hour on the program, we are going to be looking at the realities of interprovincial trade. What should we be looking at in Manitoba, and what are the barriers to growing interprovincial trade? Should that be one of the tactics, of course, to stay Canadian and buy Canadian, and the threats of the of the U.S. tariffs continue? So, we'll have that interview coming up at 10 to 8 for you. In addition, the Dream Factory has a new space. It's complete with something called a Dream Machine. We'll find out about the importance of that special space for kids who are locally here and receiving medical care. So stay tuned. Plus, we're going to announce the winner of our beautiful prize packs of warm stuff. We asked for your heartwarming curling stories. So this is all tied to the Ironman Outdoor Curling Bonspiel that is happening on the weekend. CBC, a happy and proud sponsor. And we have a team in it as well. I'm on it. We will not do well, but man, we're going to have fun. So stay tuned. We'll have some of your beautiful stories about curling you all wrote to us yesterday. 7:11, Heather Wells is in with headlines otherwise. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Well, plenty of reaction this morning to Donald Trump's suggestion the U.S. take over Gaza. The U.S. president says he wants to deport Palestinians and build what he calls the Riviera of the Middle East. While the Palestinian community in Winnipeg is in shock, the president of the Canadian Palestinian Association of Manitoba says Gaza is not a U.S. territory, and what Trump proposes is against international law. So we'll hear more on that. And some experts say reducing Manitoba's reliance on trade with the U.S. after potential tariff threats isn't so simple. Fletcher Berriger at the University of Manitoba says a 30-day reprieve isn't enough time for businesses and governments to make substantial structural change. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
By the way, we also have a Palestinian Manitoban that's going to be live on the program for a full interview with us in an hour from now. So stay tuned for that. Abby Adiemi's here to walk us through the forecast.
Yeah, good morning once again. We're looking at the snowfall warning in effect for southern Manitoba, affecting Dauphin surrounding area, and even all the way down to Lake Manitoba, Lake Winnipegosis and Lake Winnipeg will be affected with this snowfall coming. We're looking at about 10 to 20 centimeters of snow expected once the system comes in. It's going to move from the morning, and then it should be reaching Manitoba Lakes by tonight. Across the province, mix of snow, cold temperatures, windy conditions, and of course that weather warning. In Winnipeg, minus 16 at this time. We will have cloudy conditions. We're looking at a high of minus 12 today.
Do you curl? We asked Corey yesterday on the air, all of this curling contest.
Remember, I was in the ad with you of the Hoary Hard. If that counts as curling, then I think I...
Okay, we were rolling on chairs in the office, so it doesn't count. I haven't curled in, I don't know if I've ever curled a full game in my life.
I would love to.
Yeah, but
Maybe,
you haven't either?
I want to be the skip.
Yeah.
I don't know how it was, but I just want to join the team and be the skip.
Wow.
I have big dreams.
No kidding. I have no interest in being the skip at all. I'm like, show me where I should throw the rock. All right. Corey is here to talk about what's going on out in the weather and, in the commute. The weather around Riding Mountain, have you been watching the maps, I guess?
Yeah, just keep an eye on Manitoba 511 this morning. And really the worst highways right now are north of Riding Mountain through Dauphin, Winnipegosis, Swan River is where kind of the snow seems to be impacting the highways the most this morning. We're talking about poor visibility, covered conditions on the highway, so be careful if you are hitting the highways there this morning. No closed highways in the province currently, but if you do see something else going on, you want to give me an update if you're in that area or you're anywhere else here in the city. Haven't heard of any major issues on the roads here in Winnipeg, but if you're walking, biking, driving, you do see something, give me a call. That number 204-788-3093.
Well, there may be a momentary sigh of relief for us in this country with the looming threat of trade war with the U.S., though, still lingers for us. And for some people, our relationship with the United States is feeling a little bit strained. And I know that a lot of you wrote yesterday and said to caution that we're not talking about everyday Americans here. A lot of you saying, I have family down south, and please don't widen this out to being worried about everyday U.S. citizens. However, there is a relationship there that has changed because of what's been happening over the last number of weeks. We sent CBC's Jim Agapito to talk to Manitobans about their attitudes toward the U.S. and how they're feeling about all this.
Angela Cool.
They haven't. It's only a 30-day stay, so I don't think we're out of the woods yet. So I'm just going to continue to buy anything but USA for now.
Gary Henry.
How are you feeling about our U.S. neighbors right now?
Well, I don't have a beef with the neighbors. It's just a particular person that they elected. I think this whole tariff bullying was really just a scam, and that he doesn't even know what he's talking about.
My name's Adam McKee. Not great. Yeah, I don't appreciate the aggression from their president. And it's great not to have a brain-dead trade war. I welcome that. But I'm still quite keen on buying Canadian now.
How have your feelings changed then, possibly towards them?
It's not an anti-American feeling. It's really an anti-MAGA feeling. And MAGA is in charge. So as long as that continues, I don't see how my attitude changes.
Probably less likely to travel there. As a matter of fact, I'm skipping over it shortly to get to somewhere warm. Yeah, I'm not anxious to go to the United States in the next. I mean, they certainly the dollar situation. The whole situation was just really crazy, and it was an overreaction on a lot of people's parts, I think. I think the point should have been made earlier, and I noticed our premier made that point. Go to the U.S. and tell them that this tariff is for them to pay, not for us.
Other than just buying Canadian, have you changed your spending habits?
I've deleted a few accounts. I'm no longer using Amazon because of Jeff Bezos. I'm avoiding Facebook because of Zuckerberg. I'm just sort of down on the whole billionaire club right now. Just avoiding the USA on all fronts.
You said you're skipping the States. I'm wondering, are you planning to change your spending habits in any other way?
I will never buy Jack Daniels again.
What should the U.S. do to help repair its relationship with Canada?
Bring criminal charges against Musk and his cronies and President Trump. I mean, what they're doing is shameful. You know, people are not getting their money. They're targeting all the most vulnerable groups. They've got to get them out of power as quickly as possible.
I don't really know at this point. I don't see it happening in the Trump era. Really, I think he sees us as a big piece of cake to try and grab from. So,
what do you think Canada should do then to repair its relationship with the U.S.?
There's no need for that at all. That shows weakness. If you try to appease a bully, that will please him. It will encourage him. It's not what you should do.
I think Canada's doing it all it can. I think we should be pulling everything off the shelves from the U.S., even though there is a stay right now, just because we don't know how this is going to go. Hang in there, American friends. So,
well, I think our border should be tighter. But our border wasn't never the problem. 1% of fentanyl came from Canada. That's he should look at his own shores if he wants to know where the fentanyl's coming in from. The Americans need Canadian goods, and they always will. And we're in a position, just because we're so close, that that'll always be the case. So let him and we'll move on.
So that is CBC's Jim Agapito out talking to people about how they're feeling about their relationship with the United States, also what habits they'll be changing in light of what's been going on with the tariffs. Now, that is not the only thing going on. So still ahead on the program this morning, Trump, as you've been hearing, proposed a U.S. takeover of Gaza. He suggested owning the Gaza Strip, displacing the population. Today, later this morning, we're going to hear more from Palestinian Manitobans who are calling him out.
It's their homes. That's their homes of their grandparents. That's their homes of their great-grandparents. Generations have lived there. That's their land. It's for them to decide they want to stay or leave.
That conversation coming up in an hour from now, right here on CBC's Information Radio.
Your neighborhood, your community, your country, your world, your news. Your news that matters. News that belongs to you. Your World Tonight. Every night, 7 days a week on CBC Radio 1. On demand on the CBC Listen app and everywhere you get your podcasts.
Time right now is 7:21 a.m. Minus 16 in Winnipeg. Winds are calm. Wednesday morning, I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at CBC's Information Radio. And as the Ironman Outdoor Curling Bonspiel approaches this weekend, it starts Friday night, we asked you for your heartwarming curling stories. We have 2 awesome prize packs to give away. We're talking CBC blanket and a toque and socks. There's a couple of mugs in there as well for you. So we have 2 prize packs to give away. And Corey is popped in to help me through these wonderful, heartwarming stories that you sent in about curling.
So this one we got from Ken McLean. You can actually see a picture on YouTube. He says, I've been a member of Fort Rouge Curling Club since 1978. In 2019, our club celebrated its 100th anniversary. Unfortunately, COVID put a damper on some of the festivities. In honor of that anniversary, we held a bonspiel, and I was able to play in it with my daughter and granddaughter, 3 generations on one team. It's now 2025, and my daughter is the first female president of Fort Rouge. My granddaughter is playing next week in the high school curling championship in Beausejour next weekend, and we curl together on the same team whenever we are able to. We are so fortunate to have our health and be able to share a sport together that is so dear to us.
I love that. Look at the picture you sent. Look at all the generations of people on the curling sheet. Krista Zarneski wrote in, it was the Grandview Annual Legion Bonspiel, and this gets serious. She says a gentleman fell and hit the back of his head on the curling stones. But thankfully, the local doctor was curling on the next rink. He helped and assisted him. The man was fine. And then she writes, the prizes from this bonspiel are the same for everyone, whether win or lose. Good old bacon and eggs. Can't go wrong. Small town feels. Tina Roberts wrote in as well, and I love this. She writes, I don't know anything about curling, but my grandfather was an avid curler, and my cousin and I wanted to be like him. So we stole our grandmother's tea kettle. We filled it up. We let it freeze outside overnight. The next day, we, quote, borrowed paint, and on the hard-crusted Ontario snow in February, we painted a curling rink in the backyard, and we used your kettle as our rock and corn brooms from the barn. We were awful. She was angry when the spout broke off, but it's a memory I think of every winter.
Love that. Also got this from Peter Ives. He says, my curling story is that when I first moved to Canada from the U.S. in 1991, I would watch curling on TV and try to figure out what the rules and even the goal of this crazy game could be. I now curl twice a week at the Granite, and this year I will play in my 4th Ironman Outdoor Curling Bonspiel. I feel like I'm in some beer commercial. I am Canadian, although I've never played hockey. We also got this call from a listener.
Hello, my name is Beverly Burton-Guindon. Several years ago, my husband and I decided we were going to curl. We joined several leagues. We were the worst curlers probably on the planet, but it was the social aspect of the game that we really enjoyed, and we made a lot of good friendships over the years. The last league we curled in, we were known as the Losinest team, and one evening, I don't know, maybe the stars were aligned, we beat one of the top teams, and it was just a hysterical win. It just made our day. But it got better in that one of the ladies on that team did machine embroidery, and she machine embroidered our whole team T-shirts that said, "We beat Rory." Rory, if you're listening and they play this, that was our swan song. We loved it.
I love the call. I love the stories. Fantastic. Thanks to everyone who submitted the stories. As mentioned, we have 2 prize packs to give away. Thank you, Corey, for walking us through the stories too. So 2 prize packs. We chose 2 winners randomly, and they are Tina Roberts, Tina, you've won, and Ken McLean. We will reach out after the show. And we'll see you on Friday at the Ironman Curling Bonspiel in support of Heart and Stroke and other Canadian charities. It's going to be perfect curling weekend, folks. We're all going to be bundling up. Friday's low is minus 26. It's going to be clear and cold through the weekend. Perfect to be out on the Red River. If you're looking for us, our team name is Stone Cold CBC. Let's get to what's happening in morning sports now. 7:25 a.m. and Scott Reguer joins us. Good morning.
That's an intimidating moniker. Stone Cold CBC.
We have to because we can't play, so we thought we better get a really good name.
Right. That's right.
No one should be afraid of us. So we're just out there for fun and a good cause. Let's talk about a very busy night in hockey.
Yeah, all 7 of Canada's teams played in the NHL last night, Marcy. 5 of them, including the Jets, were victorious. Winnipeg shutting out an excellent Carolina Hurricanes team, 3-0. Rasmus Kupari was among the goal scorers. Eric Comrie in the net, his first shutout in about 2 years' worth of play. The biggest factor, though, might be video coach Matt Prefontaine, Marcy. The Jets successfully challenged in this game 2 goals. One where Kupari, his tally almost didn't count, and then another against the Jets where it looked like the Canes had scored on a power play. Comrie wasn't shy about lauding his video coach.
Maddie's the best in the business. So, like, when I was in Buffalo, like, our video coach there is, like, we're talking about Maddie like he's the greatest thing ever. Like, he's the Connor McDavid of video coaches. Like, it was like, this is an actual conversation I had with the video coach, Justin White. He goes, you know Maddie Prefontaine? Like, what's he like as a guy? How good is he? And I was like, okay. And now I understand how good he is. He's the best in the business. We're lucky to have him.
There you go, Connor McDavid of video coaches. Winnipeg, one more game, Marcy, before the break for the Four Nations tournament, being on Friday at home against the New York Islanders.
Let's actually switch gears here to a controversial story developing in the United States where it's a, quote, National Girls and Women in Sports Day.
Right. U.S. President Donald Trump, Marcy, is signing an executive order today designed to prevent people who were biologically assigned male at birth from participating in female sporting events. Trump is expected to sign that order at an afternoon ceremony. It's estimated there are more than 1.5 million transgender or non-binary people in the country. Among them is Leah Thomas. Swimming for the University of Pennsylvania, Thomas became the first trans woman to win an NCAA championship. Speaking to ABC, Thomas explained her decision to transition.
The biggest change for me is that I'm happy. The sophomore year, where I had my best times competing with the men, I was miserable. Trans people don't transition for athletics. We transition to be authentic and our true selves. Transitioning to get an advantage is not something that ever factors into our decisions.
That's swimmer Leah Thomas. Today's executive order marks another aggressive shift by Trump's second administration in the way the federal government deals with transgender people and their rights. The president put out a sweeping order on his first day of office last month, calling for the federal government to define sex as only male or female.
Let's go to a final story here. Let's finish on the slopes where the World Championships continue today in Austria.
They do, and one of Canada's big hopes, Marcy, is Toronto's Jack Crawford. He is the reigning world champion in the Super G and will also be among the favorites to win the downhill this week. In January, Crawford became the first Canadian in 42 years to win at Kitzbühel. That's the sport's most grueling, iconic race. Crawford tells CBC then it's time for people in this country to take note.
Watch, get excited. It's not every day you get the opportunity to watch Canadians stand atop podiums. I know I was lucky enough to have the Canadian Cowboys, but there was definitely a little bit of a hiatus in there, and I think it should just bring excitement to the sport. If you have Canadians who can win, why not watch them?
You can follow Crawford as he tries to defend his World Super G title tomorrow. CBC is going to have the live stream of that. Of course, we'll also, Marcy, be covering the next Winter Olympics in Italy. They start a year from tomorrow. Crawford expected to be one of the stars of those games, as is one of his childhood friends named Connor McDavid. Crawford and McDavid were actually grade 8 classmates and played together on a hockey team at a Toronto Sports Academy. At that time, Crawford was intent on being an NHLer himself and then played enough alongside McDavid that he thought, well, you know, skiing's a pretty good career too. So things turned out pretty well for both of those guys.
All right. Thank you, Scott.
You bet.
Scott Reguer is our sports reporter and here every morning to share with us what's going on around the various leagues and stories in sports. Take it easy on the highway if you're up around Riding Mountain. 511 if you spot any snowy or slippery sections. Please check that before you head out, because you're likely to encounter that because of this system moving through. We'll get into a full look at your forecast with Abby after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30 it is minus 16 in Winnipeg. A milder day, but it comes with a bit of snow. Minus 12 is our high. 5 centimeters of snow expected in the Winnipeg area. But as Marcy mentioned, in western Manitoba, parts of the Interlake, they're under a snowfall warning. Could see 15 to 20 centimeters of snow through the day. Well, we begin with reaction to a stunning proposal from U.S. President Donald Trump to take over the Gaza Strip. Trump making a surprise pitch at the White House last night.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site.
Trump says the U.S. will build what he calls the Riviera of the Middle East. Manitoba's Palestinian community is shocked by Trump's proposal. Ramsey Zeid is president of the Canadian Palestinian Association of Manitoba.
I'm actually I'm in shock that President Trump can even say anything like that. I mean, I don't know where or how he thinks he's even capable of doing that. It's shocking.
Zeid says people just want to live in peace and rebuild their lives. He's calling on Canada and other countries to pressure the U.S. to follow international law. You can hear more from Ramsey Zeid following World Report at 8. And you can hear more national and international news on World Report at 8. Canadian gaming agencies hope an application to block an offshore betting site in Manitoba sets a precedent. Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries says gambling site Bodog is breaking the law by operating in Manitoba, and it's asking the court to stop it. The Crown Corporation has filed the application on behalf of a group of provincial gaming agencies looking to crack down on illegal gaming sites. Will Hill, executive director of the Canadian Lottery Coalition, says there are 2 goals.
One, securing an injunction against an illegal operator within Manitoba. But 2, validating the coalition's general position on illegal gambling more broadly.
Manitoba Liquor and Lottery says Bodog is taking customers away from its own legal site. CBC News has reached out to Bodog but has not yet had a response. Some experts say reducing Manitoba's reliance on trade with the U.S. after potential tariff threats isn't so simple. Fletcher Barriger is an economics professor at the University of Manitoba. He says the 30-day tariff reprieve may give businesses some room to build up inventories and explore potential alternative suppliers. But he says it's not enough time to make substantial structural changes in terms of production.
In general, I would say 30 days is not a whole lot of time, and for big export volumes and big projects, it's nowhere near going to be close enough.
Barriger says the tariffs would create a seismic shock for Canada's economy. He says there's also uncertainty over how long the threat of tariffs might last. Well, Winnipeg hockey fans followed a trend being heard at some sporting events. Hockey fans booing the American national anthem as Winnipeg hosted the Carolina Hurricanes last night. Jets anthem singer Stacey Natras says she understands the frustration.
I'm not advocating for disrespecting any anthem. We have a long friendship with our American brothers and sisters, but these are kind of unprecedented times, and people have so many feelings to let out.
Well, it wasn't all booing. Winnipeg Jets fans had plenty to cheer about. Neil Pionk in the second period on TSN as the Winnipeg Jets blank the Carolina Hurricanes 3-0, and it is a shutout for backup goalie Eric Comrie, who made 29 saves on the night.
Feels great. I mean, it's always fun to get a shutout, I guess. I mean, I'm never going to complain about that, so I'm not happy. But once again, the team was awesome in front of me. This is a fun group of guys to play with. I mean, this is unbelievable. Every single night, they just battle as hard as they can.
The Jets still on top of the NHL standings with 79 points, 2 ahead of the Washington Capitals. Next up, Winnipeg hosts the New York Islanders on Friday. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Now let's get into our forecast with Abby Adiyemi.
We have snow in the forecast, people, with challenging travel conditions for folks in the Parkland region. Snowfall warning in effect for western Manitoba, the Parkland and Lake Manitoba also, while lighter snow will be affecting the Red River Valley and other areas. From south to north, here's what it looks like. In Winnipeg, minus 16 at this time. Expect cloudy conditions with light snow throughout the day. We should see an accumulation of about 5 centimeters of snow on the ground once the system moves through. And with its wind chill factored in this morning, it feels like minus 25. However, we get to a high of minus 12 today. The snow continues into the night and into overnight. Then it tapers off tomorrow afternoon. Similar conditions we're seeing in the Pembina Valley region. Heading west to Brandon, minus 17 at this time. Light snow in the forecast, 5 to 10 centimeters expected. We'll see a high of minus 14. The snow should taper off tonight. Looking at conditions in Dauphin and the Parkland region where we have that snowfall warning in effect, we should be seeing about 20 centimeters of snow. That's what's expected. Current temperatures in that region around minus 18. This heavy snow will continue through the day, making travel difficult. So you need to take care if you're out on the road in the Parkland region all the way down to Riding Mountain. High, we'll see highs of around minus 14 and minus 15 today. In Gimli, minus 18 at this time. Cloudy conditions. The Interlake region will see snow starting this morning. We should see about 2 to 4 centimeters and a high of about 13. It feels much colder with the wind chill factored in, so frostbite is a concern. In the Powerful Flon, clear conditions, we're seeing their temperatures around minus 28, 29. The day will start sunny for folks there, then becoming partly cloudy. Highs around minus 17, but it will feel chilly with the wind chill factored in. So frostbite is also a risk for folks in that part of the province. Now going up north, Thompson at minus 20 at this time. We're seeing drifting snow in that area. Expect cloudy conditions. This light snow and breezy conditions will stay with you for most of the day. Highs will be around minus 15, but with the wind chill factored in, it feels like minus 30 this morning. And in Churchill, we're seeing light blowing snow in that part of the province with temperatures around minus 12. The day stays cloudy. This period of blowing snow will make it even feel colder with the wind chill factored in. Expect similar conditions to stay into tonight. So across board, it's going to be quite cold once the system comes in with the wind chill factored in. But right now, Winnipeg, we are at minus 16.
Yeah, if you're a snowmobiler, you're thrilled with this winter.
Yep, that's true.
All right, let's get into what else is happening. If you're snowmobiling, walking, biking, driving, what's up with the commute, Corey?
Yeah, really, the major issues right now are in the Parkland region around Riding Mountain, Duck Mountain. Highways around there are being reported as covered with poor conditions, poor visibility. Right now on Manitoba 511, I did get a call from Thomas on the commuter line. He also says Highway 16, there's some kind of fresh snow on there. Still drivable, but it's you still got to drive a little bit slower just to stay safe. That's from kind of Assiniboine Valley to Russell Binscarth area. So not an ideal drive in that part of the province right now, kind of central Manitoba around Duck Mountain, Riding Mountain. But if you have any updates for me on what you're seeing out there, and haven't heard anything major in the city at all, but if you do see something, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Just a heads up, we're going to dip into our mailbag actually this half hour for some criticism of how we're framing some of the conversation around the tariffs. So we're going to share some of your thoughts that have been coming into us here at CBC. But first, to something completely different. The Dream Factory has a new location here in Winnipeg, and it is designed to help kids' dreams come true. The Dream Factory is well known for granting wishes to children with life-threatening illnesses that live locally in our communities. But the organization also provides support for those kids and their families through their entire medical journey. So now they have a 3,000 square foot new space in Winnipeg to help them do that. And it's got a kitchen, living room, a quiet room, I understand, but there's a special edition too called the Dream Machine. The community has been invited to come and see the space for themselves this upcoming weekend on Saturday. Andrew Cussey's executive director of the Dream Factory. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having
Thanks
me.
for being here with a bright story. We all need
course.
it. So tell us a bit more about, I described just simply this new space, but tell me a bit more about what's in it and what you're hoping it'll bring to families.
Yeah, I think just to touch on kind of what you said at the top, one of the things that's really important and that we're really working hard at this year is kind of reintroducing the Dream Factory to our community here in Manitoba. I think people really understand and know the Dream Factory for the work that we've done making dreams come true for kids in the province that are battling life-threatening illnesses. But we're really wanting to share this year some of the work that we do outside of those big dreams as well. On average, when the Dream Factory works with a family in Manitoba, we'll work with them and support them between 5 and 7 years. So it's a much longer journey than just simply a trip to Disney. And that's a big part of why we wanted to create community space for families. The kind of office we had been operating out of for the past 25 years, while it served its purpose for us, we would regularly have kids and families show up where kids were feeling scared, nervous, apprehensive, to even kind of be in our space. And that's something that we really wanted to change and really go from working out of an office that we invited kids and families to creating a dedicated community space that was meant for kids through the entire conceit. And that's really what we've been proud to build and that we're celebrating now.
So this is, if I get this clearly, then the families that you're connected with should see this space as a place through their journey, as you said, that they can come and spend time. How are you envisioning it being used? I mentioned kitchen, living room, quiet room.
Yeah, absolutely. So our vision is that families use this space throughout their treatment, and that for parents and guardians, it can be an opportunity to say to their child, look, we know you might not want to go to your tests or your treatment or your appointment today, but if we go out, we promise that we're going to head to the Dream Factory before or after. And what that will mean for a child is that they get to come to our new space. They get to play on our arcade claw machine, which we have rigged up so that it is always a winner for kids, very important, that we'll have fresh cookies baking in the oven, that we'll have games set up, and that we'll have a spot where for a minute in their journey, kids can kind of take off all of that stress and pressure that they might feel going to tests, treatments, and appointments, and know that when they're within our walls, it's a space that is not only safe and comfortable for them, but where they have a little bit of agency to make some decisions.
I love that. What's the Dream Machine? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Dream Machine is kind of the piece de resistance of our new space. We knew that we could really create a space for kids that felt safe and fun, but we also wanted it to feel like a Dream Factory would, and we wanted to give that visual identity of a factory. So we connected with a whole bunch of companies that specialize in exhibits for children's museums, science museums, aquariums, and we really worked towards figuring out, well, what would a machine in a Dream Factory do? So the Dream Machine in its conceit is really tied to the moment that a child chooses their dream come true. When we meet a child for the first time, we're going to give them a special kind of Willy Wonka style dream token.
Okay.
And when they're ready to choose their dream, they bring that back, they put it into the machine, and it will actually travel throughout the entire Dream Factory through a series of pneumatic tubes with fun checkpoints. And then what will happen at the end of that journey is that token will be gone, replaced by something that represents their dream come true, whether that's, a Mickey Mouse or a Winnipeg Jets keychain or, a dolphin or whatever it might be that represents what they want their dream to be. A little bit of movie magic.
Yeah, what a lovely idea. What a lovely idea for these kids. I understand you also were mindful to build in a space for caregivers to have a moment to maybe work through the emotions that they might be having.
One of the things that we saw pretty regularly when we were constrained by space in our former office is that sometimes when you meet a family that's in the midst, we'll meet families at the Dream Factory that received their diagnosis weeks within the last week. Like, it's very raw, it's very real, and they're still processing. And what we found is that often parents and guardians and the kids themselves need a little bit of a different journey. And where our goal for a child is to get them as excited and as hopeful and as kind of ready to think about what their dream might be and all of the kind of fun parts that are to come through our work, we also found that parents and guardians might need a moment to kind of talk about how tough it is, and to do that without the child being confronted by seeing how difficult their illness has been on their parents. So we needed a bit of a separate space to say, you know, if mom or dad needs to take a minute, we can make a nice cup of tea, have a more adult conversation while the child is still having a blast, kind of enjoying the Dream Factory the way it's meant to be. We have our dream room where kids are meant to kind of play and have fun. And then we have kind of a separate space in our kitchen where we would make a nice kind of cup of tea and have a quieter moment.
So you've talked about obviously this new space, but also the journey and supports. I know you also in moments can offer some financial support, community events. You guys do all kinds of things. Where, Andrew, can people find out more if they're listening this morning and saying, oh, I want to reach out, or if they have a need to connect with you?
Yeah, always on our website, thedreamfactory.ca. We're very active on social media, LinkedIn. Find us wherever you see the Dream Factory and send a message. We're very responsive. If folks are listening and they have been a part of the Dream Factory at some point in our journey and or are curious about getting involved, please send us a note. We'd love to have you by for a visit to our new space. We're kind of turning the page on a new chapter for our organization, and we're just excited to be sharing that with the community today.
Well, enjoy it on the weekend. I know Saturdays when you're going to be, throwing the doors open for people to check it out. Thanks for telling us about it and for the work that you do.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
That's Andrew Cussey, Executive Director of the Dream Factory. So if you want to see it for yourself, this new space is mentioned. You will get a chance to, because that community open house is on Saturday. So as Andrew just mentioned, you can get more information at their website at thedreamfactory.ca. Time right now is 7:46 a.m. minus 16 in Winnipeg, minus 17 in Brandon with light snow, and drifting snow in Thompson, minus 20. We will get snow in Winnipeg tonight, amounts that are sort of, going to accumulate. 5 centimeters is what we're expecting. But in the wider system with the snowfall warning, there's 10 to 20 centimeters expected around Arborg, Hecla, Swan River, Barons, Poplar, Grand Rapids, Verdun, Souris, Dauphin, up through Russell, Roblin, Riding Mountain, St. Rose, McCreary. You likely already know because the highways are partly covered up in that area. But tonight you're going to get the bulk of it. Well, coming up next on the program, a little bit of feedback coming in via email, actually, to us here at CBC, to some of the stories we've been following. One of the things that we've been following around the potential tariffs coming out of the United States is some of the reactions from people here in Manitoba. And, of course, you might have heard us reporting on sporting events, including the Jets game, of course, last night, where people were booing the national anthem. Amanda Jonassen wrote to us as well as another listener. So I just want to share the emails, dip into a bit of a feedback mode here. So Amanda wrote, as a dedicated listener, I was deeply disappointed by your framing of the booing of the American anthem at last night's Jets game. You suggested it was a response to Trump's tariff threats, but that interpretation feels disingenuous. It's far more likely fans were reacting to something much more serious: Trump's threat of annexation, his human rights violations, and the ongoing billionaire-led coup unfolding under his watch. Reducing this to a dispute over tariffs ignores the broader reality of what's happening in the U.S. and diminishes the genuine concerns that many people have about the state of Western democracy. Independent Canadian media should be a place where these issues are examined with nuance and integrity, not where misleading half-truths are encouraged. I expect better. So that is coming from Amanda Jonassen this morning. Also got an email from Shayna Plout, who wrote, I've been following your conversations with Canada's responses and feelings toward the U.S. I was born and raised in the USA. I immigrated to Canada 15 and a half years ago and became a Canadian citizen 8 years ago. As a dual citizen with a strong background in human rights and a healthy fear of nationalism, I caution you on the overwhelming coverage of this issue simply through the lens of tariffs and its impacts on the Canadian economy and Canadian pride. Stories on blueberries from Peru, Crown Royal whiskey, or Cheerios from Canada are one thing, but there is more to the story. The lack of coverage on the complete freezing of international aid, which will have global impacts on communicable diseases, famine, education, sanitation, and global repression, is very troubling. So Shayna and Amanda writing in this morning, asking us to widen our journalistic lens and look at wider implications, and sharing some of their feedback with us. Thank you for listening, both of you, and for sharing and writing to us here at CBC. It is 11 minutes to 8 o'clock, and World Report is coming up at 8.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes our world. Staying on top of stories around the globe. And connected close to home. It's news you can trust. Delivered when you want and where you want. On Canada's News app. Now with CBC Radio 1. Local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
Time right now is 10 to 8 as mentioned, and the temperature in Winnipeg is minus 16. After 8 o'clock on the program this morning, we have a couple of interviews coming up for you. One of them is looking specifically at what this all looks like across the border, everything that's been going on. We're going to touch base with Tara Westwood. She's a former Winnipegger living in New York. So we're going to hear what the conversations are like for people that are living in the States right now around all of the issues we've been raising. And let's talk about yesterday and move to what Trump has proposed, a U.S. takeover of Gaza and displacing the population. We're going to hear from a Palestinian Manitoban who is calling him out, and he's going to share his point of view with us. And that's also coming up in a conversation here on Information Radio after 8 o'clock. Well, next on the program, let's look at what is going to be happening with interprovincial trade, because that is one of the things that has come up and been raised when you look specifically at the trade issue around re-examining where we're at with the possibilities for interprovincial trade here in Canada. A questioning of how our provinces and territories trade within the confines of this country. Brock Coots was on our program yesterday. Brock is one of the owners of Patent 5 Distillery here in Winnipeg.
It's easier for us to sell into the U.S. and more profitable than it is to try to sell to our neighbors in Ontario or Quebec. Most provinces don't afford craft distillers from out of province the same privileges that they do for their local distillers. So to compete in another province is also difficult.
So that was an interview that we had yesterday with Brock Coots. And if you want to read more about it and hear more about it, rather, you can always go to our podcast. We shared that on our podcast called This is Manitoba, the full interview with Brock. You can also go to our CBC Listen app and check out online what is happening with all of our programs, rather, and hear some of the interviews that you may have missed here live on the air. I'm just going to look straight at the control room and ask where we're going next, because we're having some challenges here getting our next guest. So we do have our guest on interprovincial trade. We do not have our guest on interprovincial trade. Okay, so we're having trouble getting our guest. We were going to have a full look at that on interprovincial trade. So next on the program, we are going to talk about buying Canadian. And with all the confusion and tension swirling around trade between the U.S. and Canada, consumers are still curious about the Buy Canadian movement. There are a lot of ways to figure out what groceries and manufactured goods are Canadian. But what about healthcare products like medicines and vaccines? Mary Jane Hampton is a health columnist for CBC, and this morning she has some advice.
For over-the-counter pain relief, Advil is mostly imported from the United States, but Motrin is manufactured in Guelph. Instead of buying Crest or Aquafresh toothpaste, Sensodyne is made here in Canada. Benadryl is made in the United States, but Reactin is manufactured in Ontario. And in general, but I do need to qualify this because the devil is always in the detail. When it comes to over-the-counter medications, if you see a brand name on the shelf at, say, a Shoppers Drug Mart and a generic alternative beside it, that's likely to have at least some Canadian manufacturing roots. Canada imports a significant amount of pharmaceutical supplies, from cancer treatments, prescription drugs, over-the-counter medications, even vaccines, although if RFK Jr. is confirmed as the head of the U.S. health system, we can probably expect they'll have a surplus of vaccines that they might want to dump. But I'll give you a couple of big examples of where we could take a hit. Pfizer is an American company. It's one of the producers of the COVID vaccine. It's also the manufacturer of Lipitor. That's the medication to manage cholesterol. In 2016, which was the latest data I could find, there was 17 million prescriptions written for Lipitor in Canada. Merck is another pharmaceutical company known for their COVID vaccine. They also have a big share in the cancer medication market and drugs for diabetes management. Johnson & Johnson is also an American pharmaceutical company with a wide range of prescription drugs, over-the-counter medications, and consumer products. Now, like Pfizer and Merck, they do have some manufacturing presence in Canada, but we would be importing far more than what they produce here. And we talked very recently about antibiotics and how important they are. We import nearly our entire supply from the US, but we have been getting more from India in the last while just because of supply chain issues over the last couple of years. We also buy a lot of medical equipment and devices from the United States, including much of our diagnostic machinery, surgical instruments, imaging equipment, and machines like blood pressure monitors, heart monitors, and glucose monitors. Even if they aren't caught up in the first wave of tariffs, it's not inconceivable that the U.S. government could ban or limit the export of products to Canada. Absolutely nothing is absurd anymore. And honestly, we should be prepared for anything.
That's Mary Jane Hampton, a consultant and healthcare columnist for the CBC, weighing in on how you might be looking at healthcare products, such as medicines and vaccines, with the threat of those tariffs coming. A lot of people are trying to look at Canadian products and how to support Canada. Well, we were trying to get a guest to talk to us about interprovincial trade, as you might have heard me speaking about this morning. We just had a challenge, obviously, reaching our guest there. So we'll try to get that interview on the program for you tomorrow with Ryan Mantua, who's a research fellow, actually, with the C.D. Howe Institute. He's the author of Booze, Cigarettes, and Constitutional Dust-Ups, Canada's Quest for Interprovincial Trade. So we're interested in speaking with him about how things could be strengthened in this country and also about Manitoba's opportunities interprovincially that exist and those that could be, as mentioned, strengthened. So apologies we couldn't get that on for you this morning, but we'll work on getting that on for tomorrow. It is coming up to 3 minutes time to 8 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Before we turn our attention to Heather Wells and developing headlines, I'm just going to walk us through what's happening in the weather forecast. It's minus 16 right now. We have periods of light snow beginning early this morning. Into tonight, 5 centimeters of snow for Winnipeg and our high minus 12. So that's what we're expecting. Tomorrow, these snowy conditions should sort of taper off. Strong winds and a high of minus 13. So mild and snowy here in Winnipeg for the next few days. And that snowfall warning extending up through Riding Mountain, Arberg, Swan River area with 10 to 20 centimeters expected of snow in that region. Let's go to Heather Wells now and find out what's making local news. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, shock this morning from Manitoba's Palestinian community after remarks from the U.S. president last night. Donald Trump suggesting the U.S. take over Gaza. He wants to deport Palestinians and construct what he calls the Riviera of the Middle East. Winnipeg's Palestinian community is headed by the president of the Canadian Palestinian Association of Manitoba, who says Gaza is not a U.S. territory and what Trump proposes is against international law. We'll hear more on that coming up in our next news, as well as coming up on Information Radio after World Report. And Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries is asking the courts to block access to an offshore gambling website. The Crown Corporation says Bodog is breaking the law by offering its services in Manitoba. That story coming up as well at 8:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, if you want to reach us with anything on the commuter line, please call us at 788-3093 to update what's happening out there. Check 511 before you head out on the highways in Manitoba this morning. But otherwise, we've actually had a pretty good drive. Regular winter conditions, and update us if we're missing anything, please. I always love this shot of the Winnipeg streets behind me. If you watch the show on YouTube, Kevin Ipatebo, our producer, sure does a great job of plugging us in. Although I have to say, Kev, I kind of missed the winter fireplace. We used to have the fireplace for the month of December behind us with the stockings. Well, you're going to need it for warm-ups today for sure. Well, coming up on the program after 8, Heather was just mentioning Ramses Eid, and he's going to be joining us live. So we'll have a live interview with him coming up about the whole situation with Trump saying he wants to own Gaza. We'll also get more analysis and world reaction coming up on World Report in a moment. In addition, we will, as mentioned, take you down south. Tara Westwood, former Winnipegger who lives in New York. What do all of these issues look like from her perspective as a person who's living in the United States, but obviously, as we mentioned, a former Winnipegger. So that's all coming up for you after 8. Stay with us here on Information Radio on CBC.
on Cue with Tom Power.
Tom Rooney, for the past 30 years, has been one of the most acclaimed and beloved theatre actors in Canada. But in the play 15 Dogs, that acclaimed and beloved actor has to pant and act like a dog. So does he ever feel silly? He'll be here to tell you the answer.
What can I say? It just feels honest.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
It was called the Hippie Trail, the route from Istanbul to Kathmandu that attracted thousands of North American adventurers in the 1970s. The travel writer Rick Steves looks back at the life-changing journey he took on that trail. It's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Hamas says Gaza is not for sale after U.S. President Donald Trump proposed his country take over.
تصريحات الرئيس ترامب بخصوص ترحيل شعبنا الفلسطيني من قطاع غزة.
A senior Hamas official in Egypt is rejecting Donald Trump's plan for the Gaza Strip. Trump says he wants the U.S. to take ownership of Gaza and suggests Palestinians leave permanently and relocate to neighboring Arab nations. Leaders around the world are reacting to Trump's plan. The CBC's Sasha Petrusik joins me now from Jerusalem. And Sasha, what is the latest?
Well, the reaction in this part of the world has been very swift. Obviously, we are hearing from Arab countries who have long opposed exactly this kind of movement of displacement of Palestinians from this part of the world. Both of the countries that Donald Trump has counted on, Jordan and Egypt, have already rejected that. Saudi Arabia has also said that it is not going ahead with agreements with Israel unless there is a Palestinian state, and rejecting this particular plan. We're also hearing objections from many countries around the world, from Australia, France, Spain, Russia, China. Pretty much the list is growing of countries who are saying that the only way to get peace in this corner of the Middle East is to have a two-state solution and a Palestinian state. I have to say there was pleasant surprise on the streets of Jerusalem today. This is the kind of thing that people were telling me.
I don't want Gaza, okay? I want peace. And if the IDF need to be there, or American army be there, or European, or I don't know.
Maybe it will be replaced by Western values, as in businesses, real estate.
It's a good dream to dream of, but I don't think it's something that actually could happen. But maybe, let's hope for everyone. It's a win-win situation if it will happen to everyone, except Hamas, of course.
Hamas, of course, is rejecting this and saying that it is an absurd reaction. But the big question is going to be, what will it do to the ceasefire deal, which is halfway through? Will there be more hostages released? Will somebody decide that enough is enough and they will pull back? That is also a possibility. So we're hearing a lot of anger and resentment at the United States for something that they didn't expect.
All right. Thank you, Sasha.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Sasha Petrusik in Jerusalem. A U.S. military plane carrying illegal migrants lands in India. Local media says over 100 Indian migrants were on the flight. The deportation is part of U.S. President Donald Trump's immigration plan. His administration has so far used military aircraft to move illegal migrants to Guatemala, Peru, and Honduras. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi plans to meet with Trump next week. The U.S. Postal Service says it will once again start accepting packages from China and Hong Kong, but it is possible those packages will now be subject to extra taxes. Days ago, U.S. President Donald Trump closed a loophole. It allowed anyone to ship packages worth less than $800 to the U.S. without duties. In 2023, a U.S. government report found Shein and Temu sent 30% of those small packages. They are Chinese-owned shopping sites. We have an update to a story we brought you last week. 2 members of Canada's military police have now been suspended. They're being investigated for misconduct. A judge found they tampered with evidence and showed bias while investigating a sexual assault case. Nicole Williams has more.
they're not satisfied yet.
Criminal defense lawyer Austin Corbett confirms his client has filed a conduct complaint against military police. The defendant, a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, charged with assaulting and sexually assaulting his ex-wife, a military reservist. But his trial didn't happen. An Ontario Superior Court justice stayed the charges against him, saying police showed bias, failed to keep proper records, and withheld and destroyed evidence into the investigation against him. Corbett says this only came to light during pre-trial court proceedings.
The investigators who testified in this case downplayed their misconduct in court. And that was a finding of the judge.
The Canadian Forces Provost Marshal oversees military police in this country. In a statement issued this week, she addressed the court's concerns about misconduct in the ranks. She confirmed 2 of the officers involved have been suspended while an investigation takes place, and says this shows there are processes in place to keep military police accountable.
We are only seeing the tip of the iceberg.
Rory Fowler is an expert in military law and says he isn't so sure. Skeptical that such a declaration is only coming now that the case has been made public.
What we're seeing is a reaction because they literally got caught with their hand in the cookie jar.
He also questions if military police are able to investigate their own misconduct and suggests what's actually needed to rebuild faith in the forces is a public hearing. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Ottawa.
New data from British Columbia shows a significant drop in the number of toxic drug deaths in the province. It is a trend that has been documented across Canada and around the world, but advocates say the number of people dying from unregulated drugs is still way too high. Michelle Gassoub reports.
I am glad to see that slight decrease.
Drug deaths in BC fell 13% in 2024. The latest death toll is lower than any year since 2020. Even with that drop, the BC Coroner's Service says over 2,200 people died of overdoses last year, a number Garth Mullins with the Vancouver Area Network of Drug Users says is a travesty.
The deaths aren't stopping. 13% decrease is nice, but it's nowhere near where we should be.
Back in 2016, BC declared drug deaths were a public health emergency. But since then, over 16,000 people have died. Mullen says the province has failed to act with urgency.
I just hope that politicians don't pat themselves on the back and take some kind of message that they're doing the right thing.
Fentanyl continues to be the main driver of deaths in BC. There's now a renewed focus on the drug as Canada faces pressure to secure its border with the U.S. Jay Stewart is with the advocacy group Mom Stop the Harm. He says it's unlikely new measures to fight fentanyl will make an impact.
The government down south deals in fear. It's concerning, but I don't know that the measures that have been discussed recently as today are going to make a lick of difference.
Still, there is some hope. BC could be turning the page on a crisis that has killed thousands. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says if he becomes prime minister, he will treat fentanyl production like mass murder. He says he will reverse Bill C-5 and he will impose mandatory life sentences for fentanyl drug manufacturers. The Liberal government says Bill C-5 was created to address systemic racism and discrimination in the criminal justice system. Alberta government ministers and MLAs are fanning out across the United States. They are talking up the positives of Canada's relationship with our neighbors to the south and trying to avoid the tariffs still hanging over Canada. Terry Reith has more on the charm offensive.
I think we can win that diplomatic fight.
Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith says Canada needs to de-escalate the rhetoric around trade and focus on benefits. That threats of retaliation are not the right approach.
We'd be far better to return to the table again and again with diplomacy, identify the issues that are causing irritation, and deal with them in a meaningful way.
Smith is planning to be in Washington next week and again later in the month for the Republican Governors Conference. 3 Alberta cabinet ministers are at the National Prayer Breakfast in Washington, rubbing shoulders and bending the ears of business and political leaders in the U.S. 2 other MLAs are in Oregon, meeting with leaders of the U.S. Pacific Northwest. Alberta Utilities Minister Nathan Neudorf is among those in Washington.
Every time that we have a chance to talk about the strength of that relationship and how much it means to both Canadians and Americans, we should take advantage to do so.
Jatan De Silva, A former diplomat, now a consultant, argues that as a Conservative premier, Smith has access to channels not necessarily open to federal Liberals.
It's great. It's a all hands on deck scenario, and the fact that the premier's going and other officials are going, I think it's good. We got to keep working those relationships and really keep trying to get that message out there.
While the threat of tariffs still hangs over the country, Smith says perhaps that's just how it's going to be for the next 4 years. Terry Reith, CBC News, Edmonton.
That is the latest from World Report. Listening to World Report is the easiest way to stay on top of the news. We need help, though, getting the word out, and you can do that by hitting the follow button on your preferred podcast app. I'm Marcia Young. This is CBC News.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. 8:10 a.m. is the time. Wednesday morning, a little milder than it's been, but snow factoring into our forecast today. Thanks for being with us on CBC's Information Radio. This is your morning show. In this half hour on the program, we are going to be hearing a reaction from Manitobans about Trump proposing that U.S. takeover of Gaza, saying he wants to own it and displace the population permanently. Today, a Palestinian Manitoban calls him out for that and talks about his fears and feelings this morning. Stay tuned. Also, this hour on the program, tariffs are not a problem for now, but friction between Americans and Canadians is still present, and of course, not just over tariffs, but over the bigger picture. People are worried about sovereignty. People are worried about all kinds of things in the relationship. We're going to talk to a former Winnipegger who lives in New York now about what she's been hearing there. So stay tuned for that. Right now, Heather Wells is in to make sense of other news stories with our headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries has gone to court to block access to an offshore gambling website. The Crown Corporation says Bodog is breaking the law by offering its services in Manitoba. MLL has filed the application on behalf of a group of provincial gaming agencies looking to crack down on illegal gaming sites. The director of the University of Manitoba's Transport Institute doesn't think U.S. President Donald Trump will follow through on tariff threats. Trump has paused those tariffs on Canadian imports for the next month. Barry Prentice says he doesn't see tariffs being implemented because of the political cost Trump would be too great. We'll hear more from Barry Prentice in our next local news coming up at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby Adiemi has been looking at our forecast for this Wednesday.
Yeah, still tracking that snowfall warning in effect for southern Manitoba, affecting, it's going to be impacting Dauphin, Riding Mountain, all the way down to the Saskatchewan border, not living out to Lake Manitoba also. We're looking at 10 to 20 centimeters of snow once the system moves through, and it should be spreading into the region by the evening period, and we should see it ease off by tomorrow afternoon. So travel is expected to be challenging. If you're on the roads today, you'll see some slippery highways and walkways in affected areas. But right now, Winnipeg, we are at -16 and expecting snow today.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Anything to add to what Abby said about the highways, Corey?
No, nothing major. Just, keep an eye out if you're in kind of Russell, Dauphin, Binscarth, the up to Swan River. Not great conditions out there. But if you see something going on, though, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Well, up first this half hour on the program. Though the tariffs announced by President Donald Trump are on pause for Canada, tensions are still heightened between Americans and Canadians over all of the things that are at stake here. Here's what the Canada Life Centre sounded like last night before the Jets faced off against the Carolina Hurricanes. Well, whether it's jeering in person or harsh comments online, there's a lot of tension right now. Tara Westwood joins us via Zoom. She's a former Winnipegger. She lives in New York, and we thought it'd be interesting to get her point of view. Good morning to you.
Good morning. -16, huh?
That's warm for us, Tara. That's warm. You forget your roots.
I have forgotten.
What's it like to be a Canadian living in the States right now? Are these conversations, factoring into your daily life?
A little bit, just because I'm such a proud Canadian and everyone around me knows that I'm Canadian. So, I'm definitely feeling some things on both sides. Like I had someone over the weekend say to me, "Oh, I'm sorry that Trump's being so tough on your country. You guys were there for us during 9/11 and you brought our planes down into Canada so that they could land safely." And so I'm getting that side of it. And then I had someone joke. I was talking to someone yesterday at a rehearsal, actually, who's American, and I know he was joking, but he was like, "Why can't you guys just stop resisting?" And it was such a funny word. Now, I know he didn't mean it literally, but I was like, "Stop resisting." And he said, "Come on, if you guys had a problem there, you know that we'd have to protect you." So I know he was joking, but I feel that there are quite possibly people in the country that don't consider it a joke.
I know that some of our CBC reporters actually that have been covering events down south have faced similar comments from Americans, and maybe not joking.
Yeah,
I know. Obviously, you have people on all sides of the political spectrum as friends, as many of us do in our lives, but in the United States, you do. How do you stick handle that conversation, especially as you said, you're a proud Canadian, but I'm not sure how often you want to be pulled into these conversations to represent the country. It must feel like a very unique position to be in.
Well, I mean, to say that the last year has been a difficult situation in America and elsewhere, I know, with the political climate is, it doesn't even cover it. Everything's been madness here. And I feel like Trump and his America First approach doesn't allow for any nuances, or in diplomacy for that matter. So I do think, when you have the president of the United States saying that Canada has not lived up to their side of the tariffs, and Canada's allowing fentanyl into the country, and Canada is keeping the border open, and the rhetoric that is being said, a lot of people trust and believe the president, as one should be able to. So my concern is that Canada's always been, and I only say little brother because that's how it's been referred to me by Americans, the little brother of Canada or of the US, and we're close and we've always had a great relationship. But with how stressed out people have been about the border, about, affording eggs or whatever they're buying at the grocery store, people are just wanting their basic needs to improve. So if they're suddenly being told, "Oh yeah, those people we thought were allies are actually hurting us," it's not going to take much to have opinions turn. Now, overall, do I think that Americans still absolutely love Canadians and Canada? Of course. But will you have a certain segment that will just listen to that and run with it? Yeah, that's a fear.
I wonder if you could elaborate on other points where, being Canadian has ever been, quote unquote, I guess, an issue for you down in the United States? Or is this an unprecedented thing in your life to be having these conversations come up at, as you said, rehearsal and such?
I mean, I've always felt I have a different view here because, our basic needs in Canada, I don't know how this will be received, but are met. Everyone has healthcare and people can get married. And that's not, some of those, socially, I'm very left. I would consider myself moderate, so I'm able to kind of speak and do have friends on both sides. But for example, gun violence is something that I care a lot about, and I'm actually going to be making a movie, hopefully in Canada, about. And, there's no nuance there. People want me to either say I hate the Second Amendment and I want to get rid of all guns, or I'm completely pro, and I'm neither. I believe and support the Second Amendment, and I want laws to change. But I feel like, people will say to me, whether it's that subject or any subject, "Oh, well, you're Canadian." Like there's a little bit of a dismissive. I think that they feel that everything's so cushy and great up there, which, it's nice that they think it's great in Canada, and it's nice that they think everyone's so sweet. And the only negative kind of comments I'll get is people will go, "Oh, you're so nice because you're Canadian. Ah, you're naive." There seems to be like that. But again, generally speaking, I haven't had a difficult time ever in America being Canadian, except for when my green card expired during Trump's first presidency, and my immigration attorney called and said, "FYI, he's not renewing everyone's green cards because he doesn't like Trudeau." And I was like, "What?" So that was a little concern at the time because I've lived here since 92 and this is my home. But that was the only moment that I was ever kind of scared as a Canadian being here.
Tara, thank you very much for your unique perspective and point of view. We really appreciate you joining us on CBC this morning.
Thank you so much.
That's Tara Westwood. She's a former Winnipegger now living in New York, where we reached her.
The CBC News app delivers the answers you want to know and need to know.
What an extraordinary scene.
The breaking stories that shape your world. Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
Dropping the 8 now. We're just approaching Gaza.
Your source for mobile news. Delivered when you want, where you want.
This situation has changed very quickly.
The CBC News app. Download for free.
Have you visited CBC's Being Black in Canada website? It's an online platform to explore the stories and experiences of Black Canadians from across the country. You'll find relevant news articles and interviews, incredible documentaries and interesting video clips, Black achievement in sports, art and culture recommendations, and so much more. Discover the wide breadth of CBC content celebrating Black Canadians all in one place. Visit cbc.ca/Being Black in Canada today.
8:20 is the time right now. Thanks for joining us here on Information Radio on CBC. My name is Marcy Marcusa, and crisp out there, but not as cold as yesterday. Minus 16 degrees in Winnipeg, that is, and the winds are calm. Well, let's return to Donald Trump and what he said yesterday about Gaza. Donald Trump wants the United States to take over the Gaza Strip. He has said he wants to own it. He made the comment yesterday during a joint press conference with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, part of the U.S. president's proposal includes permanently displacing the over 2 million Palestinians who live there. After making the comment, journalists questioned him. Here's what Trump had to say.
I do see a long-term ownership position, and I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East. This was not a decision made lightly. Everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land, developing and creating thousands of jobs with something that will be magnificent in a really magnificent area that nobody would know. Nobody can look because all they see is death and destruction and rubble. And I've studied this very closely over a lot of months, and I've seen it from every different angle, and it's a very, very dangerous place to be, and it's only going to get worse.
Winnipegger Ramsey Zeid is president of the Canadian Palestinian Association of Manitoba, and he joins us via Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning.
Quote, all they see is death and destruction and rubble, end quote. What do you see when you look at Gaza?
When we see Gaza, we see our homes, we see our land, we see our ancestors. Rubble doesn't mean anything. We can rebuild that with or without the United States, with or without the state of Israel. Gaza will be our home and will always be our home, and that's what we see.
What was this like for you watching this, and what kind of the conversations have you been having with other Palestinian Manitobans about what the U.S. president has said?
I mean, the president of the United States right now is saying a lot of things, not just regarding Palestine, but he's throwing statements out there regarding everything. I think what the president of the United States needs to do is concentrate on the United States and the problems there. I mean, it's no secret that they have a large homeless population. Their healthcare system isn't the greatest. How about focus on the United States and let Palestine focus on Palestine?
I understand when you first were hearing this, as it was developing yesterday, that your word was you were in shock. Can you elaborate on that?
Definitely. I mean, he wants to displace 2 million people. I mean, and he wants to send them to countries that he has no say over. I personally know of people that have been that are in Palestine applying to go to the United States. If he really wants to displace them, how about bringing them over to the United States?
What concerns you the most about Trump's rhetoric around this?
He's basically doing what the Prime Minister of Israel wants them to do is and get rid of Palestinians. They want to displace Palestinians and they want to take over a land that doesn't belong to them. Palestine will always be Palestine. It's been at war for 76 years. And President Trump, the United States, Elon Musk doesn't have enough money to buy Palestine. Palestine is not for sale and will never be for sale.
He did not rule out using military force to do this. That came up yesterday in the press conference. What are some of the questions you have about what Trump is saying and what possibly could happen next?
I mean, it's no secret that the United States has been sending weapons over to Gaza for the last year and a half. So we are not new to war. We've been seeing war for the last year and a half, and we have always come back and we have always rebuilt. So, I mean, Palestinians will never be afraid of war. We don't want war. We want peace. We want to live in dignity and humanity. But if war is what comes, then that's what comes.
Ramsey, what did you make of President Trump's tone as he was, speaking about this?
I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to believe Donald Trump whenever he speaks. I mean, he was just talking about tariffs with Canada and then he backed down. I think what Donald Trump needs to do is respect international law and take care of his own country. This is not a TV show. This is not one of his own businesses that he's operating. These are countries that don't belong to him. These are people's lives that he's playing with, and he needs to tread lightly.
How concerned are you that, as you said, people aren't sure? Trump is saying so much in the last 2 weeks that people are saying, is this an empty threat? Is this not an empty threat? How concerned are you that Trump will actually do what he is saying?
I'm concerned that he probably will go through with it. He's that type of person, but Palestinians are also resilient people, and we will not be afraid. We will not be scared. So, I'm concerned that he will follow through. But I know very well that Palestinians, we won't back down. We won't move. We will stay in our land because that is Palestinians' land, and we will stay there forever.
Moving forward, what would you like to see the Canadian government and other countries say or do in response to this?
I think that the Canadian government and all governments around the world need to pressure President Trump to follow international law and basically to stay out of there. They need to not only stay out of Palestine, but stop sending weapons over to Palestine. We don't need the United States' help. We don't need their involvement. We need other countries to pressure them to stay out of it.
Many Palestinians claim Gaza as part of a future homeland, and those that have left have shared with CBC, some of them, that they dream of one day returning as well. Can you tell me a little bit more about that desire to return?
Absolutely. I mean, it's Palestinian land. It's the land of our grandparents, our great-grandparents, our ancestors. It is our land to do what we want with, and it's our right to return. And if we decide to leave, then we decide to leave. But it's our land to return, and that's what we want to do.
Thank you for your time this morning.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Ramsey Zeid is the president of the Canadian Palestinian Association of Manitoba.
When you have to leave everything behind,
you're just trying to find a way to stay here for a better life.
What are the real costs of making a new start?
I have faced so many hardships financially, emotionally, and physically.
A CBC News series looks at what it's really like for newcomers.
I am losing hope.
Welcome to Canada, the immigrant experience.
Prepare yourself because coming here is not that easy.
Everywhere you get CBC News.
Little music to get us to our local news this morning. This is His, and Get Go on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, or maybe you're watching that record spin around on YouTube. Mine is 16 in the city.
I got a new home, I gotta get mine. I've been killing so much time from the get-go. I got a new show, so much time.
nice little ditty from Toronto-based artist Aidan Bello, a.k.a. His tune's called Get Go. And your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is minus 16 right now. It's going to be a milder day, but also a little bit snowy. We expect about 5 centimeters in Winnipeg, a high today of minus 12. There is a snowfall warning for parts of western Manitoba and parts of the Interlake. Anywhere from 10 to 20 centimeters anticipated through the day into the evening. Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries is asking the courts to block access to an offshore gambling website. The Crown Corporation says Bodog is breaking the law by offering its services in Manitoba, something that is also hitting Liquor and Lotteries' bottom line. University of Calgary researcher Spencer Murch studies gambling and addictions. He says sites like Bodog took off during the pandemic.
The legal online gambling websites may have more regulations, they have more requirements that get in the way of excessive online gambling. If we are serious about harm reduction, we also need to be serious about enforcing bans on illegal offshore gambling.
CBC News has reached out to Bodog but has not had a response. Well, response this morning to a proposal by U.S. President Donald Trump about the future of Gaza.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it.
Trump making that comment last night after meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House. Now, the president of the Canadian Palestinian Association of Manitoba says he is in shock. Ramsey Zeid says the idea the U.S. could take over Gaza and move Palestinians out is outrageous. He says it is not up to the U.S.
What gives him the right to say or do any of that? Not only is it against international law, this is not a U.S. country. Gaza has nothing to do with the U.S. He has no right to get involved at all, period.
Zeid says the Palestinian people in Gaza just want to rebuild and live in peace. He wants Canada and other countries to put pressure on the U.S. to follow international law. The director of the University of Manitoba's Transport Institute doesn't think U.S. President Donald Trump will follow through on tariff threats. Trump has paused tariffs on Canadian imports to the U.S. for the next month. Barry Prentice says he doesn't see tariffs being implemented because the political cost to Trump, he says, would be too great. He also says making changes to the current supply chains between the two countries isn't as easy as some might think.
When you have established contacts and products and what have you, you don't just, instantly shift and buy from somebody else. The question always is, who is that somebody else? Because the reason you're buying from Canada or from Manitoba in the first place is that we have good prices and good quality.
Prentice also says the dispute has offered Canada a silver lining of sorts to deal with its fentanyl problem and illegal border crossings. Well, letting out their frustration. Hockey fans at last night's Winnipeg Jets game against Carolina booing the U.S. national anthem, a trend being heard at some sporting events. Jets anthem singer Stacey Natras says she understands why it's happening.
If they haven't been doing it a long time, it could really throw you off, I imagine. But I also understand it. I mean, I'm a Canadian in through, and I feel angry. I feel frustrated.
Other cities where the anthems have been greeted with boos include Toronto, Ottawa, and Nashville. Well, it wasn't all booing. Jets fans had plenty to cheer about last night. Neil Pionk in the second period on TSN as the Jets blank the Carolina Hurricanes 3-0. It was a shutout for backup goalie Eric Comrie, making 29 saves. The Jets still on top of the NHL standings with 79 points, 2 ahead of the Washington Capitals. Next up, Winnipeg hosts the New York Islanders on Friday. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Thanks to Heather Walls and Megan Ketcherson and Joni Nicolo in our news center this morning. Our live team, of course, as well. Abby and Kevin and Corey. In addition, big thanks to the people that work on the program and worked on items today on the show specifically. They are associate producers Chidi Akuma, reporter Jim Agapito, community reporter Shanley Vidal, associate producer Kalkadan Mulugeta. I mentioned already Abby Adeyemi and Corey Funk and Kevin Ipatebo. Also thanks to Donna Carrero, who's been filling in as show's producer this week, and our senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba, Leif Larson. So big thanks to everybody for their work on the program. Thank you for listening. I'm going to let Corey and Abby take it away and end the show. Corey with the last look at our commute.
Yeah, if you're on the highways this morning, Dauphin, Roblin, Swan River, those highways could be some poor visibility, some slightly poor covered conditions as well. Got a call from Thomas. Highway 16 also not looking great. Kind of fresh layer of snow in there, so you want to drive a little bit slower than usual. Abby, what's the weather conditions look like?
Yeah, it's going to be cold, snowy, particularly in that Westman region into the Interlake and Dauphin, all the way down to Riding Mountain. We're going to see heavy snow in that part of the province. But Winnipeg, this region will be seeing more like some light snow. We're looking at a high of minus 12 today. If we look up north, we're seeing Thompson feeling even colder with that wind chill feeling close to minus 30. Tonight in Winnipeg, the snow continues. We should see about 5 centimeters, and then the winds will pick up to about 20 kilometers near the midnight period. This snow continues into tomorrow morning, clearing by the afternoon period. Then we see a mix of sun and clouds. But for today, we are expecting snow in the city. For the folks in Dauphin, take care on the highway. Those at the Riding Mountain area also stay safe.
All right, Abby. Well, have a good one, sir. Let's both try to keep warm. This is so cold this February. What the heck?
It's almost gone, brother.
Almost gone. Well, to everyone who tuned in, thank you so much. And you're listening to CBC Radio 1. The Current is next. Have a good one.